Hey guys, how are you all? Today we are back with another paging Naruto story. What if Naruto had to share a house with Tsunade, Hinata and Ino? If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and do comment. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation.
In a room, like all of the others, off-white walls with cool gray tiled floors, a single one door and window looking out onto the village. It let a light breeze to rustle the cream-colored curtains with the sound of the material mixing with a light breeze pushing through. The mid-morning sun warmed everything it touched, including a young blonde-haired man who laid in the only bed in the room. Machines beeped periodically, and tubes connected to his body dripped fluids to aid his recovery. His sleep had not been interrupted for several weeks. Physically his body was healing faster than anyone else, but for him, it was taking longer than expected. The doctors could only conclude his slow progress was due in part to the enormous amount of chakra he expended and the extreme exhaustion. The doctors and nursing staff periodically checked the machines and replaced fluids when during their rounds and kept him comfortable. The remains of his right arm laid on top of the sheets, the end of his appendage wrapped in bandages stained red with blood still seeping from the wound that had once been his forearm and hand. The injury was not life-threatening but continued to bleed and seep as part of the body's way of healing, pushing out the damaged blood and tissues. Often the simplest things in nature were the most effective, albeit time-consuming. People had sat with him every day, but time kept marching forward and they could only come every few days and then every few weeks and then not at all. He was once again left alone with no one to watch over him or to miss him when he didn't come home in the evening. The sounds of people and equipment could be heard moving past his door. Everyone went about their daily lives, blissfully unaware that the man they proclaimed a war hero was still sleeping. A table on the other side of the bed filled with flowers and "gets well soon" notes from some of those who once scorned, scolded and all around hated the young man just a few years ago. Among the gifts of flowers and balloons, sat a small ceramic blue vase with the Konoha seal hand painted on one side and the Uzumaki swirl on the opposite side. The vase held an assortment of flowers with a pair of stargazer lilies, one in lavender and orange as the focal point of the arrangement. A sealed note sat at the base of the rare lilies with the words, "My hero," neatly and delicately written on the envelope. No matter how much of a hero the villagers may proclaim him, and some probably think he stopped the war single-handedly, but the truth is he had help from friends and enemies. People joined together, set aside their differences to confront a common enemy, but humans are creatures of habit and tend to fall back into their old habits. Old grudges or rivalries find their way back to the surface, and the cycle of hatred and distrust emerges once again. However, the younger generation has moved past the old ways and begun working together to build peace for the common good and future generations. After everyone went back to their homes, to their families and friends and begun the process of grieving, mourning and rebuilding from the ravages of war. 4 weeks had passed since the fight between two young men in the final valley, each fought for his own core belief of protecting those most precious to him and his home. One held the ideal of love and understanding while the other with force and an iron fist to enforce his ideas. The cost of their fight was the blonde's right arm and his raven-haired best friend's left. Both arms lost in an extraordinary display of power, not just chakra but of sheer willpower. The reality of the past weeks has not fallen away from those who survived the ravages of war, but they adjusted to life with the loss of a loved one, rebuilding their homes and businesses, lives forever changed. But there was a feeling of hesitation that hung in the air as if the world itself was stuck in a moment, holding its breath, waiting for the hero of the war to awaken. Among those caught between moments was a young woman, a shinobi of the front line. Like many others she experienced horrors of war, the loss, the pain, and now must figure out how to move past the loss of her cousin Neji, who sacrificed his life to protect her and the man she loves. The man who now holds the world on bated breath as to when he will return to her. She was among of the group to retrieve Naruto and the last Uchiha from the final valley. Sakura had tended to both of the young men and stabilized their conditions. She couldn't help but worry and had to fight back all the tears she wanted to shed at the sight of the Uzumaki, bloodied, battered and missing part of an arm. He would need help to heal and recover, a role she planned to fill when the time came. To be there for him, just as he was always there for her. Hinata's performance during the war had not gone unnoticed by her father, who finally acknowledged her and decided that she would become the next clan leader. In the light of her new reality came the realization of new responsibilities, tasks, and requirements on her time. Not only did she have her regular duties as a kunoichi, but her commitments to her clan had increased significantly. She spent almost every day by Naruto's side during the first week of his recovery, wanting to be there at every moment and hoped to be the first person he saw when he finally woke up. But time kept marching, and his eyes didn't open. After some time, she had to start taking missions along with the demands of her clan. Her time with her sleeping prince became shorter and shorter. It pained her to be away from him. It also pained her to be near him. Stuck within a moment was very painful. Hinata regretted days she was not able to go to the hospital, but she made sure to look in on him with her family's bloodline limit, just before going to bed and dreaming sweet dreams of him. Hinata spent the one night pouring out her heart to him in the form of a note. She tore it up and wrote it over and tore it up again and rewrote it again several times over. The war had changed everyone profoundly, and she realized that all the years of being shy and hiding in the shadows, too afraid to speak to the blonde, had to end, and she needed to express her feelings to Naruto. Life can change in a moment without warning. 1 second someone's there, and in the next could be gone. The beautiful young woman was brave enough to profess her feelings for him during the pain attack, but she wasn't sure if he heard her or even remembered that moment. She wanted him to know everything, needed him to know how she felt, and could only hope he felt the same way. She was grateful, in some ways, to be so busy. It kept her mind focused, otherwise, she would have spent every waking moment in the hospital. She figured that if there was time to think, that she would have just gotten more upset and would have descended into the realm of what-ifs over Naruto's condition. Her subconscious had already pushed those dark thoughts into the forefront a few times. She found that thinking so much was not always a good thing, and sometimes she wished it would just shut up for a few minutes. One of the rare days that Hinata had some downtime, she took the time to visit Naruto and hopefully be able to catch him awake. As she walked through the hospital doors, the hustle and bustle of the staff going about their duties was a sight to behold. People moved around in organized chaos. It might make someone wonder how anything gets done. The smell of medicines, cleaning solutions, and humans at their worst hung in the air, but she ignored them all. Her focus was on one room, or more specifically its occupant, whom she missed him terribly. Today her plan was simple: sit with him and offering her support for as long as possible. She also made 2 bentos, one for him and another for herself, just in case he woke up hungry. Thinking ahead and being a practical person was sometimes a burden, but she would sit with him every day for the rest of their lives. Hinata wore a faint blush across her cheeks as she moved swiftly into the hospital toward the man she loved, and into a waiting elevator. A few moments later, the brunette emerged from the elevator and moved down the hallway towards Naruto's room past the nurse's station, failing to notice the eyes following her as she went past. While Hinata was lost in her thoughts and turned the last corner, she nearly collided with a pink-haired Kanochi, Haruno Sakura, who appeared to be in a rush. Hinata's quick reflexes and exceptional dexterity afforded her the ability to avoid a head-on collision. Swinging her right foot behind her left and shifting her weight to the rear, following her right foot, avoiding Sakura. Despite the sudden move, the young heiress never lost track of her precious beanos. Sakura was so focused on the chart she was reading and failed to realize Hinata was there until it was almost too late. She was surprised, to say the least, but after coming to a stop to speak with the brunette. "Who, Hinata, we almost one heck of a collision, are you alright?" Hinata gave a small smile. "Oh, yes, I try to be mindful that people are sometimes running around here or focused on other things. I'm glad we didn't run into each other," Hinata said softly. Sakura eyed the Hyuga heiress, who wore white chiffon blouse embroidered with delicate pastel flowers, a soft pale lavender cardigan to cover her shoulders. Her white skirt floated around her ankles with the light rose-pink band that accented its hem. Her presence was not what Sakura noticed, the orange fabric sack that showed the bento boxes held within. The pink-haired woman smirked, knowing exactly where the shy heiress was going. Sakura was elated that Hinata had not given up on the blonde knucklehead. Hinata's cheeks flushed at Sakura's teasing and gripped the bento bag tightener. She wanted to deflect the attention from the reason she was on the VIP floor and whom she was going to visit. "How is Sasuke-san?" Hinata asked politely, not that she cares too much about the accused traitor, but it was a way of deflecting the attention. Sakura's face lit up a bit at the sound of her love's name. "He is recovering well, but will not be able to leave for another week or so. Even then he will still need to take it easy and recover after being discharged. As quickly as her face brightened, Sakura's face darkened a bit as her eyes dropped to the floor and held the clipboard to her chest. Hinata sensed her friend's concern and placed a hand on the other woman's shoulder to gaining her attention for a moment. Her pupil-less eyes met the other woman's emerald eyes, expressing a caring look. He'll be arrested once he's released and has to answer for the crimes he committed over the years. Her eyes fell back to the floor in a vain attempt to hide her fear. I have tried to talk to Tsunade-sama, but since she is no longer Hokage, her input only goes so far now. I just hope that Kakashi-sensei remembers the time we spent together on Team 7, she finished with a sigh. Hinata listened to her pink-haired friend. Her personal feelings for Uchiha Sasuke were beside the point. She knew Sakura loved Sasuke, but at the same time, his actions contributed to Naruto's current status. Sakura had asked Naruto to bring Sasuke back to the village when they were young. The request made Naruto train harder at almost every waking moment, an experience of pain and emotional upset in the process. All of the hours of training and years of blood, sweat, and tears, however, make Naruto the man he is now, a hero to the world. A man who was sleeping in a bed while the world passed him. I am sure that things will work out. He has a lot to answer for, but, in the end, he did the right thing, Hinata said and gave a small smile. I hope you're right, Hinata. I really do. Sakura's face was still somber with a faraway look in her eyes. After a moment, the medic Nin's attention turned back to the matter at hand, her friend's ongoing blonde crush. So, are you going to see a certain someone? Sakura's expression shifted as she pushed aside her concerns about Sasuke and his uncertain future. Hinata's face flushed at the question. They both knew why and whom she was going to visit, but she couldn't help but tease the shy heiress. Hinata's hands clenched the bento satchel tighter as she averted her eyes from her friend. After a few moments, Sakura had to let her friend go. She did enjoy messing with Hinata about Naruto, but she was working and had other things that needed her attention. Go see him, Hinata, Sakura said as she walked past the shy woman. Maybe give him a kiss, you might wake him up, Sakura said with a smile and a little giggle as she rushed away. She did regret not being able to see Hinata's face, but had a good idea that it was very red. Hinata stood in the middle of the hallway, her face beet red, and Sakura's giggles fading into the background under the noise of the hospital. Collecting her thoughts, Hinata continued walking to her original destination, but Sakura's comment floated around her mind. The idea reminded her of one of her favorite childhood stories, in which the prince awoke a princess from her eternal slumber with just a kiss. True love's first kiss. After a few moments, the young maiden stood in front of the room where her sleeping prince lay. Her inner thoughts kept moving back to the idea planted by Sakura a few moments ago. She just stood and stared at the closed door, trying to push the idea away, but it was a losing battle. Her inner goddess told her to march in there and kiss him, but she argued that kissing him in his current state would be unethical, creepy, weird and wrong. But her inner self countered each argument with images of his smile, bright blue eyes, his lips. Her cheeks flushed again. Hinata kicked herself mentally and yelled at the goddess. Now was not the time. The goddess relented but was not done with the argument, and finally, Hinata was able to focus on just opening the door. She knocked on the door as if expecting and hoping that he would respond, but alas, her ears met nothing but silence from the room. Her shoulders slumped a bit with a bit of disappointment that he had not miraculously recovered and would be sitting the bed with a smile to greet her. She imagined for a moment they would laugh together, talking all day long. He would eat the food she prepared, and he would be all hers. Hinata slid the door open and hesitantly walking into the room, her eyes fell upon the familiar sight, his messy golden hair, minus his bright sapphire blue eyes. He was still in the same position, unchanged, unyielding and unconscious. With a heavy heart, she walks by the table of flowers and gifts, untouched and unattended for weeks. The balloons hover low and partially deflated. The flowers, once bright and beautiful, were wilted and dark from lack of attention. She took note that the stargazer lilies were still standing tall, however, they were looking a little sick, but they kept their color. She made a mental note to water them at every visit. She moved to the chair that sat next to the bed opposite the door and looked upon him, paying close attention to the bandages around the remains of his right arms, that was still seeping blood. She thought about how much of an adjustment it would be for him, and all the problems he was going to have to overcome. It was going to be bigger than any of his previous training and would be the most difficult challenge he has ever faced. She steeled herself to be there for him every step of the way, whether he wanted her help or not. Naruto-kun? Her soft voice broke the silence of the room, but after a few moments, she was met with silence still. I'm here, just let me know if you need anything. She was met with silence once again, but she tried not to feel discouraged or loss of faith in him. He never gave up, and she would not give up either, no matter how much she wanted in the past. Every time she visited, she would sit and tell him about her day or days with no stuttering, stammering or hesitation. A completely normal conversation. Albeit one-sided, she was still proud of her progress. She hoped that it would continue once he woke up from this extended nap. Time felt like it melted away as she continued her one-sided conversation, laughing and giggling, with the hope that something would spark him to return. At some points, she felt like he was there with her, but then she would look at him only to remember he was still sleeping. A knock on the door stopped her quiet conversation and moved her attention to the visitor. Come in, please. Hinata spoke up for him. The door opened slowly and the fifth Hokage, Tsunade, stood in the doorway. Hinata immediately jumped to her feet out of habit for the woman who was walking into the room. The older woman smiled at the young woman who now stood next to the bed. She's here again, that's good for the both of them, she thought to herself. But pushed it away for the moment and focused on the matter at hand. Hinata, it's good to see you. I hear you have been busy, but it appears you still make time for the important things in life. She gave a glance to the young man in the bed as she spoke. Has he done anything yet? He can't just keep loafing around like this as a vacation. Just because he is a hero doesn't mean there isn't work to do. Her comments delivered in jest but also knowing that her words would enrage and infuriate the whiskered-cheeked teen. It was her way of trying to wake him up. The blonde woman's words annoyed someone in the room, but it was not the young man who was laying in the bed. Hinata is a polite and decent woman, but she did not appreciate the former Hokage's words, even if they were in jest or meant to motivate Naruto. Excuse me, Tsunade-sama. She did not bow and spoke with a slightly angry edge. You know much he hates being in the hospital, and I am sure you remember how much trouble it was to keep him in this building. Hinata's eyes narrowed at the other woman. No one messes with her Naruto-kun, especially since he could not speak for himself. Tsunade smirked at the young woman's words and knew this would be her reaction. Hinata was always there to defend the boy she has cared for so much over the years. Settle down, Hinata. Tsunade raised her hands defensively as she spoke. I am just joking with you. I know he isn't doing this on purpose because I know there are two women in this room who would kick his ass for upsetting them. Not that she feared the young Hyuga, she also knew that Hinata would defend the golden-haired boy against anyone. She proved that over the years. But Hinata also would not take kindly to being the butt of one of Naruto's pranks, and there was no doubt that she wouldn't hesitate to make him regret his decision. Anyway, it's good to see you're here. I was hoping to run into you. I have a favor to ask. A favor? What can I do for you? The heiress asked curiously. The older woman picked up the chart that hung from the foot of the bed and began flipping through the pages of medical information and reports. Being a medic and doctor, the young man's health would always be something she's involved. Her apprentice and her former aide had been heading up, and primary care gives, but she has kept a close watchful eye during the weeks of his treatment. Looking up from the clipboard, with a raised eyebrow, a smirk slowly forming across her lips as she looks directly into the light lavender orbs of the young woman standing next to the hospital bed. Hinata felt the other woman's gaze burning into her very soul, but she did not falter and would not be intimidated, not anymore and not by anyone. What can I do for you? Well, since Mr. I'm going to be Hokage has insisted on lying in bed, Tsunade's voice had a loving but mocking tone, meant to annoy the blonde boy. I need someone to look in on his place once in a while. If I know him, the place hasn't been taken care of very well. Hell, there might be plants growing out of milk cartons or maybe a new type of life form cultivating in the refrigerator. The older woman joked at the end, even with her brows furrowed together. Hinata cringed at the visuals that formed in her mind as the word fell into her ears, but her heart fluttered with excitement. She was being asked to go into his apartment. A place she had only visited once but had never gone inside. The place where he lived, ate his meals, slept and showered. Her mind again started building a visual that caused her cheeks to brighten. Hinata's flushed face didn't go unnoticed by the other woman, who grinded. Only able to guess but having a good idea of what the young woman was thinking. Why me? Why not Sakura-san? Hinata asked, not wanting to seem too eager to take the assignment but also didn't want anyone else to do it either. Well, Sakura has been very busy with her hospital duties, and to be honest, you are the first person I thought of for this task. You are dependable, honest, and one of the only people I think he would be comfortable with you taking care of his apartment. Tsunade spoke with sincerity and honesty toward the young woman on the other side of the bed. Hinata mulled over the words, while her mind flutters around with images of preparing meals in Naruto's kitchen and snuggling in his bed after a long day's work. Her imagination reeled and wandered into more steamy places. His lips touching hers, his hands creasing her skin. She suddenly shook her head to clear the thoughts from the forefront, but she would revisit them later. If you don't want to do it, then I will ask someone else, maybe Tenten or Ino. The former Hokage knew her statement would seal the deal. Since the idea of anyone going into Naruto's apartment wouldn't go over well with either the brunette or the golden-haired boy, the former was determined to handle this request herself. No, Hinata exclaimed in a mixture of panic and excitement. Damn it, I almost blew my chance to be close to Naruto-kun, she chastised herself. It's no problem, it's the least I can do since he has done so much for me and everyone over the years. Please don't bother anyone else with this task. Hinata's words were confident and strong. However, I don't have a way to get into his apartment. It was a minor detail, but if a simple key stood in the way, she would reduce the door to a pile of kindling and replace it later. I've already thought about that and not going to be a problem. Kakashi should have a spare key left by the third Hokage. He will be expecting you anyway since this was his idea in the first place. Tsunade spoke a matter of face tone. I will see him in the morning. Thank you for thinking of me for this assignment. Hinata bowed, showing her appreciation. This is not a mission or order and will not be paid by the village. It's just a favor to a friend, that's all. Tsunade explained while performing her examination. The medic Nin moved around the bed. Hinata stepping out of the way to the foot of the bed. Her gaze took in his full form. Her eyes settled on the now exposed wound that was the remains of his forearm. All that remained was damaged tissues. She could see the remains of the radius and ulna could be seen but only partly. The skin had been pulled and grafted to seal the wound but was not complete. With the bandages removed, the smell of flesh, blood and cleaning solutions permeated the room and her nostrils. Hinata only looked at the wound for a short time before a bit of nausea set in, causing her to look away. She saw blood and serious injuries, but never with someone whom she cared about so much. Hinata knew the wound was severe, but seeing it exposed, she understood how severe it was and how much healing was still needed. He's not going to stay in the hospital when he wakes up. I guess it might be a good thing he's still sleeping. Her thoughts were logical and analytical, but her heart still panged with sadness. She would tie him to the bed if it meant he would heal properly. Tying him to the bed would not be such a bad thing either. I will have to keep that in mind. Her inner goddess smiled with a mischievous look on her face. Hinata turned away while Tsunade worked. She needed to focus elsewhere. She remembered that the lilies needed watering and took a break from the ravages of war. No words were exchanged between the two women as they went about their respective tasks, each in their thoughts but joined together by a common blonde-haired blue-eyed thread. After a few minutes of watering the plants and cleaning up the wilted petals and leaves, Hinata took a moment to use the attached private washroom. Sliding the washroom door closed, she walked to the bedside and noticed the bandages were clean. Tsunade was standing at the foot of the bed once again writing on the clipboard. Hinata stood politely silent until the other woman completed her notes, and placed the clipboard back onto the bed. How is he doing? It looks like the wound has a long way to go, Hinata asks out of genuine concern. Physically, he's doing well and not in any mortal danger, but you are right that his arm is taking a long time to heal. Even with his enhanced healing abilities from the Biju, it's taking time. I suspect that it might be his way of taking a well-deserved rest too. The former Hokage spoke in a matter-of-fact way, never moving her eye off her patient. Hinata was not looking at the other woman who was speaking but looked at Naruto longingly, hoping and praying he would wake up. Even if she was not in the room, all she wanted was for him to wake up and return to her. She had been crying herself to sleep with upset and loneliness every night. I hope you are right, he has certainly earned a break, but there are plenty of places we. Hinata suddenly realized her words and instantly turned red, revealing her inner desire. I meant he could go. Hinata's voice stuttered and became quiet. Tsunade chuckled at the young woman's faux pas, but it was also endearing to the young heiress, especially when it came to Naruto. I am sure you could help him with vacation planning, you're very organized and well thought out. The compliment made Hinata shift her gaze to the floor as her outlook got a bit brighter. Is that what everyone thinks of me? The reliable, dependable, organized, and boring friend. Is that all I am to them? While she prided herself on being ever prepared, it also hurt a bit to know everyone thinks of her as being boring. Tsunade noticed Hinata's silent contemplation, and stepped closer, placing a heavy hand on the young woman's shoulder. Hinata, you are doing great. We all appreciate your diligence, and when he wakes up I am sure he will be grateful as well, the older woman spoke softly. I think he will need plenty of help and you are the best person for the job. He is hard-headed and might not want to admit that he needs help. You might even have to kick him in the ass occasionally. She smiled as Hinata frowned at the thought of having to get forceful with the blue-eyed man, but she would do it to make sure he healed properly. I will do my best to be there for him when he needs help and if he doesn't cooperate. Hinata's eyes darkened a bit, and a smirk pulled over her lips. I will just have to make him cooperate. The two women both chuckled a bit but also had a mutual understanding. Tsunade's gaze hardened and she looked eyes with Hinata. Just be patient and kind to him as I know you will. If he does cause you problems, she smirked. Give him a whack on the head, that usually gets him back in line. Hinata beamed at the word of encouragement but didn't like the idea of hurting Naruto when he was trying to recover. She focused on the positive and said, I will do my best for Naruto-kun. The blonde-haired woman gave a gentle smile to Hinata before leaving the room without another word. Once Tsunade left the room, Hinata sat down in her previous spot and after a moment continued speaking to the young man. While she was telling him about her plans to replant the lilies that were sitting in the room. A groaning sound overshadowed her quiet voice and abruptly caused her to stop speaking. Her face turned a bright shade of pink with embarrassment, not realizing that it was lunchtime and her stomach was letting her know it was time to eat. With an embarrassed look painted on her face, she looked at the young man expecting and almost hoping that he would have woken up. Alas, her stomach's hungry growling made no difference to the situation. I made you some lunch, if you wake up, you can have it. I'm sure it will be better than the fluids they have been feeding you for these last few weeks. No response came back to her words. Leaning closer and placing her hand upon his upper arm, his skin was so warm and smooth over the toned bicep muscle. If you wake up, we can go to Ichiraku's and I'll buy you all you can eat. She figured a little temptation might help, even though her wallet would not appreciate it much. But, if a bit of bribery got him to open his eyes, then it would be worth the financial hit. She watched him for a few moments but there was not even a flicker of his eyes. She squeezed his arm a bit. I guess you will wake up when you're ready. I will be here as much as I can until you do. Hinata stood and walked over to a small table near the door and retrieved the bentoses. She sat back in her chair and pulled each box, then opened the first one on her lap. I know you are not a fan of veggies, but I made your favorites in the other. If you wake up I'll show you. Her words were met with silence. Some people might get frustrated or upset but not Hinata. She understood and accepted the recovery process was going to be a long process and she was ready to put in the time to see it through to the end. After about 20 minutes, Hinata finished her bento. Looking longingly to the male in the room, she noticed that his face was looking a bit too scraggly. He was always cleanly shaven. Whenever she was on a mission with him, he took the time to shave in the morning. She thought that he would not like the idea of being seen in an unkempt manner. It may be presumptuous to assume he didn't want to be unshaven, but he always seemed to care about shaving. An idea to address this problem popped into her mind, and she made another mental note to bring some things from his place tomorrow. The hours passed slowly. Hinata drifted off for an hour or so but was awoken by the nurse coming by during her duty rounds. Hinata stood and stepped out when the nurse asked her to leave the room, so she could change his bed linens. Hinata offered to help, but the older woman curtly dismissed her from the room, by suggesting she get a snack from the vending machines at the end of the hall. The woman's tone and suggestion did not sit well and earned an unfavorable look from the Hyuga. She could tell the woman held some hostility, but toward whom was the mystery. Going to the vending machines was not something the young woman was not going to do. She stood outside of the room, trying not to let her seething leak out. Her arms crossed over her ample chest, head down, eyes closed, with her right foot on the wall. While not the most dignified way for the Hyuga heiress to look, but she was in a rare mood, pissed. Who the hell does she think she is? Dismissing me from the room like a child. She realized she was angry but didn't know exactly why. The door opened, and the nurse stepped out and slammed the sliding door shut behind herself with a thud, echoing in the hallway. She looked to her right toward Hinata and scoffed, "You can go back in if you want. I don't know why someone of the Hyuga clan would bother with him. If you ask me, he should be in the prison wing along with that Uchiha boy. They are both dangerous and should be locked away." Her lip pulled upward in a scoffing sneer. That was it, the straw that broke the pre-verbal camel's back. Hinata cracked and turned to the woman full on, just a small gap between their faces, but neither woman yielded in their intense staring contest. The air around them became charged with emotion. "Now you listen here, you crone. Don't you ever speak badly about Naruto-kun. He risked his life for you and everyone in the world, losing his arm for his effort." Those were the words she wanted to yell at the other woman, but she just couldn't muster the courage. Her eyes dropped and so did her stomach at her own weakness. She felt like the little girl she had once been, not the frontline fighter who stood against the darkness that threatened all life. A slight scoff and snort of derision came from the nurse as she smiled smugly. "See, you know I'm right. He's a threat and dangerous, you shouldn't associate with such filth. Find a nice man to take care of you. I'll make sure he is treated the way he deserves." A creepy smile formed on the woman's wrinkled lips and face. Hinata didn't like the nurse's attitude and had to do something. To say something, she couldn't just stand there and let this person talk about her Naruto-kun in such a negative way. She had worked too hard and come so far to be seen as weak again. She had to be strong for him and for herself. "You are wrong." Hinata could only muster a low voice. She wanted to yell and scream, even strike the women down, but she just couldn't make such a bold display. "He fought for you, for me, for everyone, but you can't see past the fox." She finally met the nurse's gaze. "Well, if you can't see that he is a good man, who cares and has worked hard for everything, then that's your problem, and maybe you should take a hard look at yourself and not judge him for something that was not his fault." Her tone grew louder, but not to the level beyond a normal conversation. The nurse was mildly amused by the pale-eyed girl defending Naruto but was not going to yield her position in front of the heiress or flinch as she was locked into a staring contest with the young woman. The nurse was sure about the boy, and no one could persuade her to the contrary, not a cage, not a Hyuga, no one. "Well, I guess you are so blind to what he is and will have to wait until he destroys you or your family and kills someone closest to you," the nurse said with no hesitation and scowled even harder at Hinata. "Suit yourself, but when he hurts you or kills everyone, then you will know I was right, and I tried to warn everyone about him. How dare you?" Hinata's voice rose but not to a level above the background hospital noise. Her voice dropped to a reasonable level but continued to voice her feelings. "You have no idea what he endured, and has seen over the years. He is a good and kind person." Her fists clenched in anger. "Despite that treatment from people like you who always looked down on him, scolded and scoffed at him when he was a child, he still fought for you. He cared about his village enough to fight the horrors that threatened his life." Her body shook with rage, and her knuckles turned white. She was so angry at the thought of people still looked at him as if he were a monster or nothing but a weapon to be used and locked away when it was not needed. Hinata didn't care about her profanity and meant every word she spoke. She would kill the old crone if she treated her Naruto-kun badly or tried to hurt him. Her face was blood red, and her hands shook as she pushed past the old lady who was a bit surprised by the behavior of the prim and proper young woman from a very prominent clan. The lavender-eyed woman didn't want to hear the crone's response. It didn't matter, no matter what she said, it was wrong. Once Hinata stepped through the doorway past the nurse, she slammed the door behind herself and pressed her back against it in an attempt to keep anyone from opening it. Tears of anger and frustration began streaming down her face. She fell to her knees and covered her eyes and tried not to cry and to keep the negative energy out of the room. She wasn't regretful about what she said to the old woman. She was upset that some people still held old feelings and thoughts when it came to the young man, and the Biju contained within him. After a few minutes of crying, the tears subsided, and her cries of anger turned to laughter. The realization of what she had done hit her like a ton of bricks. She just ripped a total stranger, a new asshole in public, at least by Hinata's standards. She had never been so rude or obstinate to anyone, even on missions or in the face of an enemy. She was always composed and polite, but this time was different, and she was done with being meek and polite. Collecting herself, she stood and smoothed the invisible wrinkles in her dress and walked over to check on Naruto. The sheets appeared to have been changed, the IV tubes were connected, but Hinata had a lingering feeling that something was wrong and wanted to be sure he had not been mistreated by the nurse. Pulling back the sheets a bit, she could see the hospital gown looked old, and stains with blood and fluids all over the front of the garment. The previously suppressed anger came raging back in full force, like a force of nature and the sight of the soiled hospital gown. Her first instinct was to find the nurse and strike her dead and hang her from the ceiling as a warning to all others who would mistreat her Naruto. But she held herself in check. She would deal with the old lady later. She could not let the mistreatment stand and had to act in his best interest. Searching through the cabinets, she found an extra sheet set and located a clean gown and pulled it out of the storage compartment. Hinata turned to the hospital bed and looked upon her longtime love. She hesitated for only a moment and then proceeded with replacing his hospital gown. She would try to respect his privacy but also knew what had to be done and would try her best to protect his dignity as much as possible. Her hands shook and her heart pounded with excitement but she knew what she was doing was important. Her hand touched Naruto's left biceps and paused, enjoying the heat from his skin. His dark tanned skin complemented her pale porcelain skin. Lost in the moment, Hinata realized that this was the first time in all the years since they first met that she had never actually touched him. The only real exception being during the war when he held her hand to infuse chakra or the few times he caught her when she was unconscious. She picked up his left arm, it was heavy, and she noticed the toned muscles under the skin and quickly pulled it through the gown. She disconnected and reconnected a few of the IV lines. It was a simple enough process. Then moved the cloth material to his right side, exposing part of his broad and toned chest. She couldn't help sneaking an admiring peek at his pecs, firm, tight and solid. She felt her heart skip a beat and then raced hard in her chest. She knew she needed to focus on the task at hand, and wanted to finish before someone walked into the room and caught her in a compromising position, but she also wanted to admire his masculine physique. Continuing her work, she moved his right arm gently, trying not to disturb the bandages at the end of the limb, and she was able to get the soiled garment off of his body. It was apparent to her that the clothing had not been replaced recently, a few days at least. Hinata was going to speak to Sakura and Tsunade about this incident along with the nurse's attitude. It took all of her willpower and concentration to keep focused on placing a clean garment onto his body. Her inner goddess kept trying to tempt her to look over his body, especially to peek in his masculine feature, but she stayed strong and didn't give in to temptation. He was heavy and a bit difficult to maneuver, but after a few tense moments the job was done, and she hoped he would be more comfortable in a clean dressing. She made a mental note to check that he had a clean hospital gown, and if needed, she would replace it on every visit. Once she was satisfied with the garment swap and discarding the soiled linen into the proper receptacle, the young woman sat down, the anger only slightly ebbing. She was very angry with the woman for maltreating Naruto. It was intolerable and unthinkable that a nurse would mistreat a patient so egregiously, to the point of not change his gown. Has she done this to all her patients or just Naruto? The thought infuriated Hinata all over again, and she knew if the nurse showed up again, things would not end well for the other woman. The old bitch will be leaving in a body bag if she does that to you again, she said out loud to her sleeping prince. Deciding it was time for a quick snack before she had to leave, the sun was starting to set and much to her dismay she had duties to attend. Picking up the second bento, she looked at its contents. There was no sense in wasting good food. Are you sure you don't want any, Naruto-kun? It's really good. Why don't you wake up and find out? Unfortunately, silence was his response to her. In a moment of frustration, she realized how much the events of the last hour affected her. Seeing the blonde-haired boy whom she loved so profoundly treated poorly by some people, despite all he has done for everyone, hurt her deeply. Please wake up. I need you to be alright, that way I can be alright. Her heartfelt words resulted in a new set of tears falling onto the edge of the bed. If you are trying to rest and relax after all the years of hard work and training, then we can go away together for as long as you want. I want to be with you. I need you. She bit her lip trying to hold back her angst, but it didn't work. She moved closer to him. Her forehead touched the side of his right arm. Her tears continued to fall down her face and onto his shoulder and chest. How could she live her life? How could everyone move forward? Her mind reeled with the thought of nothing changing for either of them and remained stuck in this painful moment. Hinata sobbed quietly. Her tears soaked his arm and sheets. It didn't matter if he might have caught her crying. If he were to wake and see her crying, that would be perfectly fine, and they would be able to move forward together. After a few minutes of crying, effectively cleansing some of the anger, frustration, and upset of the day from her soul, Hinata composed herself and stood. Moving to the washroom, the young woman wiped away the dried tears from her face. The skin around her eyes was puffy, and her pale lavender eyes were tinted red, a sign she was crying. Hinata splashed some water on her pink cheeks. She straightened her long flowing hair and looked at herself in the mirror. Hinata stared at herself and wondered what was going to happen next. The day was upsetting enough, and she didn't know how much more her heart or sanity could take before either or both shattered permanently. She moved out of the small washroom and took her place next to the bed once again. The young woman packed up the bento boxes and placed them into the orange fabric sack that was placed the rolling table. Taking one last look around to ensure everything is neat and tidy since the staff was not trustworthy to do so, everything was in order and ready for her departure. It was getting late, and she needed to leave soon otherwise, her father would order the whole clan to begin looking for her if she was out too late, plus she had things that required her attention. But she really wanted to stay with Naruto now more than ever to make sure he was taken care of properly. The morning sun broke low over the horizon, bathing all it touched with warmth, signaling all things to awake for the day. The rays broke through the cream-colored curtains and faintly illuminated the blonde locks of the sleeping hero. Slowly the sun rose in its ascension through the sky, its light moving down the young man's face, first his forehead, and within minutes his eyebrows, then his eyes. Suddenly, the man's eyes began to wriggle, the eyebrows contorting together, lifting his right arm in an attempt to block out the light. But something felt amiss when the light persisted to his eyes. A grunt of annoyance persisted. Uggghh. Let me sleep a few more minutes. The man growled out. Moving his left hand, he finally succeeded in blocking out the offending morning light, but then he noticed the feeling of something attached to his arm. Persistent and slightly annoying, beeping sounds finally made it into his ear. Being familiar with both of these sensations, he was able to deduce his current location quickly. Really? I'm in the damn hospital again? Just what I need, he groaned, still not having opened his eyes. His mind was still foggy about what happened and how he got in the current situation. He recalled fighting Sasuke in the final valley, and after the fight being very tired along with having a conversation with his raven-haired friend. Everything else was a blur or missing. Speaking of missing, his right arm felt odd and was hurting profoundly with a pulsing ache. Reaching out with his right hand to grab hold of the bed rail, he felt his fingers touch the plastic and metal structure of the bed rail, or so he thought. He attempted to pull himself up and fell right back to the bed. His eyes flew open trying to comprehend what had happened, pulling his right arm in front of him. The man immediately looked upon the white bandage, stained with blood and fluid, but nothing follows the dressing, not forearm nor hand. He looks upon the whole situation as a wave of disbelief strikes, followed by panic and then shock. He was breathing rapidly, and the machine that was monitoring his heart rate emitting an almost steady tone due to the rapid succession of beeps. What the? His only words in almost 2 months are cut off as his mind and body both return him to the dream world. A moment later, a wave of people floods the room in a panic state. Naruto's rapid heart rate caused alarms to go off at the nurse's station and induced panic among most of the staff. The old crone just sat waiting for her shift to end. Doctors pored over the machines and readouts as nurses checked the blue-eyed boy's vital stats. Call for Tsunade, we need her input. One of the doctors barked to the staff. Hinata walked out of the large tower. The keys to her beloved's apartment held firmly in her hand, the shortest path to her destination already plotted out in her mind before she left the building. Turning to look to the sky as a light breeze brushes her smooth skin and moves a few strands of her dark hair out of place. The warm autumn sun was kissing her face as she walked down the street. She showed an air of calm, but under the surface, Her mind was trying to focus, but it ran wild with the idea of being in his apartment. Cleaning and straightening up, making sure everything was secured. The idea of being so close to him even if he was not physically present, was exciting. The image of her working in the kitchen, the stove firing while she prepares a meal. He walked through the front door after a long day in the office. "Honey, I'm home," he calls out to her, and she would greet him with a smile and a kiss, a long and loving embrace. They would then sit and eat the meal she prepared. Then they would sit together and snuggle on the couch, enjoying each other's company. They would talk about their day or sit quietly. At night they would climb into bed together, Hinata snuggling up against his broad chest while being enveloped into a tight embrace. They kiss, and he would show how much she means to him when they make love. Eventually falling asleep holding onto each other as if their lives depended on their connection. She started feeling that the imagined images were memories and they made love almost every night and that she needed to start preparing dinner for them since he would be coming home in a few hours. However, reality crashed into her along with the poor chibi goddess who fell on the floor burst into tears. They both felt crestfallen at how much work and was still ahead to make the dreams and fantasies real. "You are getting ahead of yourself," she chastised herself silently. "First Naruto has to wake up, and I have to work to become his friend before we can be lovers." The word, lovers, resounded in her mind as the excitement slowly replaced the dark reality that had started clouding her mind. It was a vicious back and forth cycle between what is and what could be. Turning to her determination along the desire to make him see her as more than just a fellow shinobi, the young woman forged ahead. Without paying attention to her surroundings, her feet stood at the bottom of the staircase leading up to Naruto's apartment. Now, only a flight of stairs separates her from the start of something that would hopefully end up being the beginning of something very special, not just for her but him as well. So why can't she take the first step? The brunette looked at the faded, weathered wooden steps, and their dull green color from years of repeated use. Hinata's ample chest became tight with anxiety and hesitation, her doubt taking hold, as a breeze picks up a few strands of her silky hair. Having faced down enemies and threats to her life, hell fighting in the 4th grade shinobi war only a few months ago, but this was one of the terrifying things she has ever faced. Move, thump, thump, Hinata's heart pounded in her ears. Move, damn it. She screamed at herself. Thump, thump, the sound of her heart continued to pound in her head at a near-deafening level. The feeling of drowning was overwhelming as the young woman tried to draw a deep breath, the pounding in her head, but it also felt light at the stairwell that seemed to stretch infinitely. Kakashi-sensei is counting on me. Naruto is counting on me. If I can't do this, then has all the years of struggling been for nothing? She asks herself rhetorically. Finally managing a deep breath and steeling her nerves without a second thought, she moves her left foot onto the first step. Even the longest journey starts with the first step, she repeated to herself as she began ascending the steps. Her mind cleared when the green door of Naruto's apartment stood before her. She takes in its weathered and marred facade. The wood told her what he had to face as a child. The villagers hounded him, broke into his apartment, and even beat him as a small child. He knew nothing but hatred and misery. He worked hard to change people and to make them all see him for the person she had always seen. Running her fingers over the marks that appeared to have been created using a blade of some kind, she was able to make out the words, demon, evil, and child killer. The words were still carved in the wood even though it looked like someone tried painting them over, but the layers of paint could not erase the words altogether. Moving her right index finger over the wood toward the doorknob, a splinter of wood pierced her skin. It didn't hurt, but it was enough to draw a few drops of blood. A small amount remained on the door, bright red against the green pane. She brought her finger to her lips and sucked gently to seal and draw away the bit of blood. He suffered terribly, sacrificed so much, fought for everything he ever earned in the world that had turned their backs to him. In the end, he fought for the world, for the people who once hated, scorned and ignored him. At that moment, for some inexplicable reason, the memory of him taking hold of her hand during the war when he needed strength came to mind while she stared at the word, demon. The feeling of their chakra meeting and mixing was something that she could not describe except for incredible, but that would not be an accurate description. Her mind started to drift again, as she stood in the open-air hallway for all to see and speculate. Quickly and almost mechanically, as if it was something she had done thousands of times before, Hinata reached into a small pocket of her pants and drew out the pair of keys that she received a short time ago. Without a thought, she slipped them into each of the locks. If she thought about anything else, she would have stopped. But the click of the latch echoed in her ears, and her heart skipped a beat in surprise, excitement, and a bit of fear of the unknown. She twists the knob, pushing the wooden door open just enough to slip past the doorframe and closed the door briskly. The wooden barrier to the world was now at her back as she leans against it. Its solid form was a symbol unwavering strength and warmth, lets her know it will keep the world out for her, just as it has done for him over the many years. Her eyes shut tight, only now realizing she is also holding her breath. Inhaling deeply through her nose, she takes in the smells of the apartment for the very first time. Her mind was running on instinct, and right now her instinct wants to take in the smells of the place he has called home since childhood. Her nostrils flare as she took in a deep and almost unending breath. The smells flood her olfactory nerve, that attempts to identify everything observed. Ramen, lots of it, past and present. His musky natural scent, earth and sandalwood. Flowers. Flowers? She said out loud, questioning her nose. Taking another breath and yes, she could smell flowers and plants. Opening her pale eyes to the room, it was dim thanks to the tattered curtains looked to have been hanging in the windows since he first arrived. The central focal point of the room was an empty green table with only two matching chairs placed opposite to one another. The green paint of the pieces looked to be the same shade as the door on the inside. There was a fine layer of dust on every flat surface, a sign no one had entered or cleaned anything in quite a long time. The room she stood was a small kitchen and dining area. Her bedroom could easily hold the entire room with space to spare. Adorning the walls was a brown-colored wainscoting capped with an exposed wood chair rail. The rest of the wall was a faded off-white paint color, and the floors were a dark brownish color that looked to have been cleaned many years ago. Hinata could see one area of the chair rail that had more nicks, dents, and scrapes. She deduced that Naruto most likely sat in the chair that faced the door and gave him a view of the archway leading into the rest of the apartment. He couldn't even feel safe sitting in his own home to eat a meal, she thought as her heart ached for him. As she moved around the table, a few spots along the walls had dents and even two holes that were about the size of a child's fist, deep gouges in the wood materials around the room. It looked like he might have attempted to repair the damage, but those attempts were now long since abandoned. Hinata's keen eyes note all the suffering and things to be fixed. The young woman continued taking in the whole room with all of her senses. The refrigerator to her immediate left hummed and occasionally sputtered or rattled. A small countertop, leading to an oven-stove combo, and an overhead cabinet hung to the far right of the room. A large potted plant sits next to the refrigerator. Its large green leaves were wilting, and the edges were dried and brown. It has not tasted water in quite a while. While studying the leafy plant, Hinata noticed a label on its faded blue ceramic pot but had to crouch down to read the dull writing. A child wrote it. The label identified it as a Colocasia esculent plant. Below what appeared to be its proper name was another line that indicated it was known as an elephant ear plant. It was unique and something she had never seen. While it was simple and plain, it was also cute. She made another mental note to water the plant and care for it when she visited, and based on her observations, and her visits would be frequent. After circling the table, Hinata was standing near the door she had entered through a few minutes ago. She clicked the deadbolt to the lock position and placed the keys back into a pocket slipped off her cardigan, putting it over the back of one of the chairs. She turned her attention to the refrigerator then, noticing an unpleasant smell in that area when she walked past it. In the back of her mind, she knew the smell was the result of food spoilage and part of her dreaded what might await her behind the closed door. Placing a hand on the worn chrome handle, she gives a tug, the mechanism reluctantly released, and the door swung open. As the door opens and the light illuminates the contents, unleashing a powerful force in the form of a stench that permeated the room nearly instantly. What she had let out was even worse than what she thought it might be, the smell of 6-month-old milk, old instant ramen cups and a few other things that cannot be identified but have leaves and stalks growing out of takeout containers. The pungent smell of neglected food hit her like a hammer to the face as she only took a small whiff. Her stomach turned from excited butterflies to a putrid swamp. She slammed the door closed quickly, covering her mouth and nose. It even burned her eyes, and she shut them tightly. While blindly and clumsily rushing in the direction of the sink, she tried to suppress the urge to vomit. When the brunette felt the countertop and opened her eyes, but the kitchen sink greeted her with a pile of dishes, cups and cooking pots that had been untouched for months. The soiled dishes appeared to have new forms of plant life growing out of them. The smells and sights were overwhelming. Try as she might, her stomach rebelled and forced her to vomit into the sink, adding to the smells of the kitchen. Retching a few times, as she kept her eyes shut tightly while small teardrops were forming in the corners, she breathed through her mouth to get air, hoping to keep the stench out. "Holy shit, I don't know if I can do this." She spoke to the empty room while trying to calm her stomach and move past the initial shock. It appeared her nose died or didn't want to acknowledge the rancid smells of the room. Hinata slumped down to the floor, sitting on her heels. She pressed her forehead against the cabinet door. Taking a few more moments trying to relax a bit and push the smells aside. As a veteran of a war, she had seen and smelled unpleasant things that went along with that title, but this was something completely unexpected. She felt a bit disappointed that he didn't keep his place clean and tidy, but that was an incorrect assumption. That thought made her feel a bit guilty since he endured some of the worst things that life or humanity could throw at him. On top of it all, he didn't have anyone to teach him the basics. So how could she hold him to a standard that he may never have known? Plus, he had other things to deal with and was hardly home in the first place, and even when he was, nothing but emptiness and painfully lonely memories. The guilt of being so presumptuous, of everyone. She had watched him the most over the years and understood him in many ways. But being in the middle of everything, his personal life exposed, it was something completely unexpected. If Naruto-kun can endure and overcome, then so can I. She gained her composure and forced herself to disconnect from the unpleasantness, the same way she did in battle. Opening her pale lavender-colored eyes and looking to the ceiling at first. She stood and forced herself to face the most disgusting sink she had ever encountered that was now adorned with her breakfast. With a new sense of composure and the realization that taking care of Naruto's place was not going to be a fanciful dream, and it would require a lot of time and energy. She began adding to her mental checklist of things that were needed to get everything cleaned up. Big black trash bags, gloves, lots of them, breathing masks and cleaning supplies of all types, again lots of them. Finally, Hinata walked briskly to the archway that led to the rest of the apartment, trying to get as far away from the kitchen as possible. Maybe I will leave out the balcony, she thought, not wanting to face the kitchen for the rest of the day. She walked into a small narrow hallway that carried the same color palette and materials as the kitchen. The walls were scuffed and dirty like they had never seen a scrub brush or cleaning rag. Cobwebs and dust bunnies were hiding in the corners at the top and bottom of the hall. The floors worn from repeated pacing and use. She stopped at two doors opposite to one another, one open, the other pulled closed. Sticking her head through the open doorway, she held her breath with the memory of the kitchen incident fresh in her mind and prepared for something similar. The room she peered into was tiny and mostly empty. A table along the far wall holds a few more potted plants of various shapes, sizes, colors, and genus. Some were in bloom, out of bloom, or didn't bloom. The one thing they all had in common was thirst. I hope he has a water pitcher somewhere other than the kitchen, speaking for nearly the first time out loud as if the plants will tell her where she might find their drinking glass. Don't worry, I will make sure all of you get watered and taken care of along with your big brother in the other room. Her voice was sweet and kind. She had loved plants all of her life and never thought he would have a similar hobby. She always wondered what his hobbies were but assumed he might not have any beyond training, fighting, missions and carrying the yoke of burden. The butterflies resurrect a bit in her now empty stomach, but the thought of food was not appealing at the moment. The plants get more direct sunlight thanks to sitting in front of a window, but the drawn shade obscures some of the life-giving light. Hinata opens the curtains and the window to let in some fresh air, to hopefully push out the stale dusty air of the apartment. An immediate breeze pushes in to rustle the leaves and bring in new aromas from the outside. She needs to remember to close up before leaving, otherwise the plants will freeze. Moving across the hall to the opposite door, she assumed it to the washroom. Opening the door, she found her suspicion to be correct. An open shower in the far corner with a sink and commode in the other corners of the small room. Though there was tile throughout, it looked like they only got washed when he took a shower. There was a pile of clothes and soiled towels next to the door that had long since mildewed and was now mossy. I am making an executive decision, all of that is going in a trash bag. I'll buy Naruto-kun some new towels, plus these are old anyway. She declared to the room. A moment of realization hit her. She felt no hesitation and complete autonomy to make such decisions about another person's possessions, but it was obvious he needed help. Besides, it was her mission to take care of his place, and she would do precisely that, and there was no way he could clean up with only one hand. She brought her hand to her mouth, weakly gasping as she realized, he won't be able to make shadow clones with just one hand. It was his signature, his trademark, one of his unique characteristics that were now out of his grasp. The realization of his handicap didn't even occur in Hinata's mind, but now she realized even the basic mundane things that people use their hands to accomplish in their day-to-day lives was now going to be extremely difficult for the blonde. Washing, dressing, eating, carrying a bag of groceries, being a shinobi. The last one frightened and upset her the most. Was his career now over? Could he still be Hokage? Technically he was still the rank of genin, just like any other child who graduated the academy, even though those days were long ago. Hinata's stomach cringed and churned with upset and sorrow for the man whom she loved. Her eyes started to tear with the idea that everything he fought so hard to accomplish could be out of his reach forever because he selflessly chased after the Uchiha for so many years. He blindly dedicated and risked his life for the raven-haired boy and the pink-haired woman who were both his former teammates. Both of which are nowhere in sight when he needed help the most. Her fists clenched at the thought of people even now mistreating and taking Naruto's kind and caring nature for granted. Pushing the feelings of anger and disappointment to the side for the time, addressing and dealing with the issues of his former teammates could wait until he woke up. Turning off the washroom light, that had been left on for who knows how long, the Hyuga beauty moved to the end of the hall where she could see a large sliding door that could only lead out to the balcony. That meant that Naruto's bedroom was a few steps away. Her steps increased slightly, and the happy butterflies erupt into a frenzy of activity. I am going to be in Naruto-kun's bedroom. I can't believe it, she squealed to her inner goddess, who was hyperactively bouncing off the walls of her mind. I am going to see where he sleeps and where he gets dressed. The last words resound as images of his strong muscular, lean body appear. Her inner chibi started to drool over an imaginary partially clothed Naruto that appeared in the mind space. Before the inner goddess could make him completely nude, Hinata pushes everything to the side for her evening shower. Upon entering the last room of the apartment, Hinata immediately noticed the clothes thrown all over, some on the floor, on a chair, partly hanging out of the chest of drawers and some on the bed. His bed, the place he slept and dreamed, wasn't made and had likely never been made. The sheets were light blue but worn so thin that holes started to appear near the edges. To think he lived like that, she was trying to not to feel superior or belittling to the man she loved. No, she felt some pity toward him, shame that no one had been around to watch over him growing up. He didn't know how to keep a house or live on his own. Why would a young child have to know how to live on his own? He was a child. Orphan or not, someone should have watched out for him, no matter what his circumstance. She had so many happy thoughts before she walked through the door with a bright outlook and the image of only having to straighten up a little bit and keep an eye on things. But the reality was now glaring her in the face. It slapped her for being such a foolish girl. She had been so naive and blind to think that after his childhood and early years that he would live like an average person. Had she become blind and presumptuous from her gilded cage in the Hyuga compound where members of the branch family tended to the housekeeping and household chores? Hinata would always make sure her personal space was clean, neat and orderly by her hand and would take care of her laundry or individual needs. Overall, other people mopped the floors, beat rugs, tended to household tasks, and she had never considered those little things as something he might not be equipped to handle. She felt ashamed of herself, with her new resolve and feeling of confidence. The wind was effectively knocked out of her sails. She was now adrift in a sea of self-doubt. Naruto's personal life that he had hidden so well from everyone. Should she tell Kakashi that he should find someone else? But who would be willing to take on such a challenge? Would they be there for him to support and help him in the way he needed? Hinata had never given up on Naruto and was not willing to abandon him when he needs someone to stand by him the most. He had helped her countless times, fought for her and been there to support and push her forward. She would not throw him to the wolves and let him suffer further. It would not be easy, but it was going to be much more difficult to wait until he got home. Plus, the poor plants needed someone to watch out for them also. Hinata's face showed nothing but intense feelings ranging from sadness to anger to hopelessness as she sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the meager and sparseness of the room. Something caught her eye on one of the shelves to the far end of the room. It seemed familiar, but she could not place why. Standing and moving to the object, she found that it was one of her ointment jars. In fact, it was the one she had given to him at the qualifying round of the Chunin exam. A thin layer of dust covered the lid of the container. When she removed it from the shelf, the vessel left a circle free of dust, making the wood grain stand out. Twisting the top, she assumed it to be full, and he had never gotten around to throw it away. But while Hinata was falling back into her old mindset of self-doubt, received a happy surprise. He used the whole thing, she said out loud as the sadness pushed away and her outlook brightened once again. She now had another item added to her mental checklist: homemade ointment. If her list got any longer, she might have to start writing things down. Maybe I should start making a list. It's getting harder to remember it all, and I don't think the ointment will be the last item. His bedroom smelled just like him, his musk, his masculine scent with a hint of ramen. Placing the empty jar back in its place on the shelf, she noticed the books of different shapes, sizes, and colors stacked around the room and on the nightstand. Some of them she can immediately discern as the writing of the blonde's late mentor. His novels are world famous. Even the prim and proper Hyuga princess was secretly a fan of the white-haired Sannin's risque writings. It was her guilty pleasure, and the book helped her through many long lonely nights of yearning to be right where she was at the moment. The only difference was that she was all alone and still had her clothes on. The day had taken a few unexpected turns. However, there was a bright side. He noticed her and used something she had gifted to him years ago, along with their mutual appreciation for specific literary genres. She noticed a copy of Makeout Tactics laying near the nightstand. She smiled and picked it up and noticed an inscription on the inside of the front cover. "Kid, I hope that one day you can appreciate this book and maybe find someone special to share it with." Jiraiya. Hinata felt a little bit of guilt for intruding on something special between master and student, and she also felt sad that Naruto lost his master and didn't get to say goodbye. After a moment, she had a thought. Did Naruto-kun help to write the last book? Her mind reeled with the idea. "You need to wake up, Naruto-kun. I have so many questions for you and some things to share with you," she giggled. As if speaking to him via his bedroom would make magically appear. She felt her face heat up rapidly, along with her core. Her focus shifted to the bed again and wanting to take a flying leap into it, wrap herself up in his sheets and snuggle them. Her desire to immerse herself in the bed was nearly overwhelming, but without him being there it would not be as much fun. "I really need you to wake the hell up, Naruto-kun." She smirked with a devious look on her face as she continued to look at the bed. Hinata decided that she needed to focus back on her mission and started picking up the clothes and placing them into sorted piles based their color, primarily lights and darks for washing. Speaking of which, she did not recall seeing a washing machine anywhere in the apartment. How does he wash his clothes? She thought to herself and added another line to her ever-mounting list of things to do. Completing the task of getting clothes sorted and ready for laundering, she looked at the two massive piles. Don't tell me he just buys new clothes when something gets dirty. That's so wasteful and expensive. She couldn't help but think that it was the only reasonable explanation. The brunette looked at the bed once again and decided that it needed to be stripped and have the sheets replaced, but they were far beyond washable, and the rubbish bin was the only option for them. The thought of stuffing a storage scroll with all the clothes that needed washing seemed to be very time-consuming, plus it would raise suspicions with the other Hyuga clan members. Suddenly she recalled a sign at the bottom of the stairs leading up to his apartment that read, "Tenant Facilities." The idea of the apartment building sharing a laundry facility made sense, but why would he not use it? The idea that this could be another example of the gap in basic life skills appeared to fit, as sad as it was to consider. With the ever-mounting to-do list, a few things occurred to the young heiress. First, that there was a lot more to this mission than she initially thought. It was going to take a tremendous amount of time and effort to get things some level of acceptable. Finally, she was still so happy to be the one to do all of it for the man she loves so deeply. She would show him that he can rely on her to help him through these difficult times. She would cook for him and help him with his apartment, as well as help him with the necessary life needs. I could be like his wife. The words rolled off her tongue, echoing slightly in the near-empty room, while her face heated up and another surge of excitement. I am going to need a long and hot shower tonight, she thought as the inner goddess started jumping up and down with giddy excitement. Hinata spent a few more hours collecting and sorting clothes and towels that either fell into the to be washed category or thrown away. She still avoided the kitchen demons for the time. Her stomach and nose were not ready to address anything in that area. She would need help, but she also wanted to be a bit selfish and keep it all to herself. These were times when the shadow clone jutsu would be convenient and helpful, but alas, it was not something she could use at the moment. A short time later, Hinata finally finished sorting out all the laundry and wrote down a list of supplies that would be needed since there were very few available in the apartment. The alarm clock indicated 20 minutes after noon. She has been in his apartment for almost 5 hours, and it only looked as if she made a small dent in her mental checklist that had grown into a short novel. Hinata had been moving around the bed and was fighting a losing battle of not laying down even in its current disheveled conditions. Leaning over the bed on the one side, she pulled the faded red comforter down to the bottom along with the gray top sheet and pulled them free, placing them in a pile to be discarded. All of the other bed linens were removed and put in the discard pile and left the mattress exposed springs and holes in the material. She sighed in disappointment and said, "Every time I think I'm getting ahead, there's something else that appears." But she kept her head and forced herself to focus on what had to be done and remembered that all the effort would pay off in the end. Naruto didn't seem to be waking up anytime soon either, so there was time to work on things over the coming weeks. After clearing the bed lines, a bit of bright red caught her eye between the mattress and headboard. It was a lone sock. Hinata could not reach it without climbing onto the bed, kneeling on the mattress and the rogue piece of footwear in hand. Her vantage point and perspective was completely different. She was in his bed. His scent was so concentrated to the point that if she didn't know better, she could have sworn he was right there in the bed with her. Sweet Cammy, she wanted him to be there with her, ravaging her, love her, be with her always. She laid face down into the bare pillow and pulled the second pillow up against her chest, hugging it tightly, breathing through her nose, memorizing every fragrance. It was warm, comfortable, and she felt free while also feeling safe, as if nothing could disrupt her enjoyment. Her eyes started feeling heavy, and she felt her mind starting to drift off into the world of sleep. His bed and scent would hopefully influence her dreams for a long time to come. "Hinata, thank you for waking me up. I missed you so much," a voice spoke gently. She felt a warm, solid body against her back as a pair of powerful arms wrapped themselves around her waist. His breath struck her left ear, just before his lips touch her cheek as he holds her tightly. The hazy figure cupped her ample S with no hesitation, squeezing them tightly while kissing down her neck. She gasped in surprise and moaned out his name when her S are pinched between his index and middle fingers while he kisses and nibbles at her neck. His manhood pressed against her backside, resting comfortably between her cheeks. Its power, size, and girth sent her heart rate soaring as she tried to reach for it but found herself on all fours, wholly helpless and vulnerable to his most fervent desires. "You're so beautiful, I could just look at you and stare at everything, but that wouldn't be much fun." He spoke in a low voice. She knew he could see her most intimate places and shudders as his finger moved up the back of her right thigh, then made a straight shot towards her womanhood. Sliding his thumb over her clit and applies a bit of pressure, causing her to moan out loud. His hands took hold of her butt cheeks, opening her more to his view and teasing her. Even her dreams teased her, and she loves it. She loves being submissive to him. She would let him do anything to her. Moving over Hinata's body, his kisses meet the soft and smooth skin of her backside and occasionally bit each cheek, gently but firmly. She moaned and gasped with each little nibble of her sensitive skin. She couldn't stop moaning his name with a long draw as he continues to plant kisses and runs his tongue over her skin, but never touching any of the places she needs him the most. "Please," she whispered. "Please, I need you. Please, I can't take this anymore." He seemed to ignore her pleas and continues to torment her until he makes contact with her clitoris again. The submissive woman groaned at the sudden touch, and then his finger began to massage the engorging bud of pleasure. He held her left cheek with firm pressure, exposing her tiny asshole for his viewing pleasure. Thoroughly embarrassed, humiliated, but there was nothing she could do to stop, and she couldn't help but feel exhilarated by the way he was treating her. Then she feels his lips move closer before his tongue runs over the puckered entrance to her forbidden chamber. Moaning out as a new surprising sensation strikes her, as well as her pulse. Being treated in such a way was so exciting. She felt how much he loved her and knew what she truly needed. His thumb raced to apply pressure to her sensitive clit while his tongue pressed through the entrance it had previously been encircling. She couldn't believe her body craving such sensations or that she was enjoying the dream so much. She felt the familiar tightening in her stomach getting ever closer to her release. The release that would only bring her some relief but not total relief. Complete relief could only occur in the waking world when they were in his bed together. She found him standing before her, his erect member pulsing with UAL power the likes she had never known or experienced. He took hold of long silky midnight blue hair lifting her face to meet his. Without hesitation their lips clash. His tongue assaults her mouth as he pulls firmly on her hair, breaking their kiss. They gaze deeply into each other's eyes. Love, lust, desire, passion all expressed without a word spoken between the two lovers. Moving his hand to the back of her head, he pushes her face to meet his erection, only a few centimeters apart. She opens her mouth in hungry anticipation of accepting him. "Tell me you need me, Hinata," he says to her. "I need you. I need you to fuck me, please. Please, please." He smiles in his signature foxy grin. "Hinata. Oh, Naruto-kun. Hinata. Naruto-kun." She feels hands beckon her forward, her lips parted. "Hinata. Just do what you want, Naruto-kun. Hinata, wake up." Naruto's voice sounded much more feminine and a few octaves higher. Hinata wasn't sure why but didn't care. A hand grabbed her shoulders pushing her up and down, shaking her roughly. Her blonde lover faded away just as his enlarged member touched her protruding tongue. Hinata's mind transitioned back to the waking world suddenly, and her eyes flew open, as she sat up quickly and met a pair of eyes similar to her own. Hanabi, she shuddered, now humiliated that someone caught her sleeping in his bed. Not just anyone but her sister of all people. To top it off, the little shit was not likely going to let her live this down. "Hinata, what the hell are you doing?" Her sister responds. I got assigned to check and watch out for Naruto-kun's apartment, and I was cleaning and straightening up for the last few hours." Hinata's words were firing out at a rapid pace, and I was going to leave but then I found a sock under the pillow. I got it but also wanted to, bed, and. Hinata's rambling words stopped as her sister started giggling. The younger Hyuga couldn't help but laugh at her elder sister, and trying to make sense of the rambling that had just been spoken would be impossible. Hanabi had an idea of what was happening in her elder sister's dream and that her sister loved the blonde hero. Even before he was a hero. After a pregnant pause, Hinata finally managed to compose herself and climb out of bed. Looking back at the spot she had been laying, she saw a wet spot on the pillow and felt a line of moisture on her right cheek. She tried to wipe her face surreptitiously and so suddenly flipped the pillow over. But Hanabi had already spotted the stain of moisture and continued to laugh at Hinata's futile attempts at modesty. "I saw you drooling." Hanabi giggled and grinned. Hinata stood up straight as an arrow. Would her humiliation never end? She only hoped that no one else happened to be around to witness the occurrences in Naruto's bedroom. "How did you know I was here, and for that matter, how did you get in here?" "Well, I came to find you because our father has been looking for you all day." Hanabi stated in a matter-of-fact tone with a hint of sass toward her older sister. Hinata's blood ran cold. The heat she was feeling in her core instantly fades at the mention of her father. What? The elder sibling cannot get the words out while looking at the digital clock that read, 3:15. Damn it. Hinata instantly knew why Hiyashi was looking for her. There was a clan council meeting scheduled for 2:30. A meeting that she was to attend as part of her training and familiarization with the position of Hyuga clan leader. Now her father would be furious, especially if he found out where Hinata has been most of the day and why she missed the meeting. Hanabi, on the other hand, was not going to tell their father all of the details. Knowing it would be best if Hinata went to their father first and explained the situation. Even after all these years of missions and a war, Hyuga Hiyashi could still terrify her eldest sister. Hinata had been awakened from her very intense dream and couldn't enjoy the buzzing feeling in her stomach in maidenhood. The sensation was being replaced with a far less pleasant atmosphere and was rapidly dispelling her UAL excitement. However, the brunette thought back to the fading memories that were so vivid a few minutes ago before losing them. Employing Hanabi's assistants to close and lock up the apartment, the two young women depart via the terrace. Hinata recounted the kitchen problems, and they both agreed it would be the best way to leave for both of their sakes. Minutes later, after departing the apartment, Hinata realized she had not eaten, and having vomited earlier, she was running on empty. I need to eat something before going back home, Hanabi. Alright, we are getting close to the restaurant district, so we can get something before facing the music with father. Hanabi joked at her older sister's predicament. That's not funny, Hanabi. Hinata scolded. But the younger girl was right. The situation was not going to play out well for the elder sister. We can go to Ichiraku's, it's his favorite place. Isn't it? Hanabi stated, causing Hinata to stop dead in her tracks, her cheeks heating up at the thought of the blonde. You were dreaming about him, weren't you? Hinata's face became blood red with embarrassment. What did I say while I was sleeping? Oh, Kami, kill me please. I can't take people finding out that I was sleeping in his bed. But then I was also having an erotic dream about him. Hinata panicked with uncertainty about how to address the situation. Hanabi always enjoyed teasing her big sister, mostly because Hinata's reactions were funny, and the older woman could become flustered at the mere mention or hint of Naruto. With a Cheshire cat grin, Hanabi turned to her sister, don't worry, I'm not going to tell anyone you were having a dream about Naruto. He was probably asking you to do things to him. His sensei was a big perv and he's probably one too. Hanabi's words were delivered in a mocking tone. Next time you sleep in his bed you should make sure the doors are locked. The youth took off, knowing her sister would try to chase her down, but Hinata usually wasn't able to catch her. Hinata had enough of her sister's teasing, especially with the situation at hand, and as much as she cares for her sister, enough was enough. The elder sister appeared in front of her little sister with the help of a body flicker, catching the former in the stomach with a chakra-charged fist. The hit was not meant to do any permanent damage but to let the young girl know that she had crossed a line. The young girl gave a small yelp of pain and surprise before falling to the ground while looking up at her sister. Now you listen to me. Hinata's face was red with anger. I don't need your little jokes and comments. I am on a mission for the Hokage, and I am also really worried about Naruto-kun. On top of that, now I have our father, who's going to be furious about my absence earlier today. The brunette's face contorted with fury, and Hanabi was the proverbial last straw. Now, damn it Hanabi, if you are not going to help, then go find something else to fucking do. The two Hyugas have now attracted an audience as Hinata looks around at the small but growing crowd. The usually quiet, polite and composed eldest daughter of the Hyuga clan had taken her younger sister out in the middle of the street and started cursing at the girl. Now Hinata was a public spectacle, and to top things off, the incident would likely get back to her father quickly. Well, in for a penny, in for a pound, Hinata mentally recalled the phrase from a book she read. Feeling eyes upon her, Hinata lashed out, "Can I help you people?" She glared at the bystanders that had stopped to watch the scene unfold like a daytime drama show. Completely upset and frustrated with everything, her emotional cup overflowed, and Kami help anyone else who got in her way. Hinata's momentary outburst had not only caught the notice of the citizens who happened to be on the street, it along the attention of a few Anbu who were on patrol. Unfortunately for Hinata, her father was on the lookout for his daughter and had employed the entire Hyuga clan in the search effort. If they located the young woman, they were to escort her back to the Hyuga compound immediately. Suddenly a pair of Anbu, one masked with a bird and the other a bear, appeared before Hinata and Hanabi. The men wore a standard Anbu uniform. Bird was of a thin but muscular build with short dark hair with no visible weapons, while his partner was a bit taller with longer auburn-colored hair and a very muscular build. Bird wore a large war hammer-type weapon on his back with a large blade on his right hip. The man was a close combat type. Hinata-sama, you are disrupting the citizens, and your conduct is not befitting that of a shinobi of the leaf. Bear spoke firmly and was actually a member of the Hyuga, feeling a sense of embarrassment for her conduct. Hiyashi-sama has been searching for you and asked that you be escorted back to your home. Turning his attention to Hanabi, we will escort both of you home. Hanabi scowled at him but then turned her attention back to Hinata, while standing up and dusting off her clothes. Hinata now realizes the gravity of the situation with a pair of Anbu who will not take no for an answer. Nearly at the same time but in a very far away place, a gentle breeze blew over a field of green grass that stretched to a bright blue horizon. A lone cloud floated overhead as if it was out for an afternoon stroll on a beautiful day. A young man lay comfortably with his hands behind his head, basking in the warmth of the sun, dozing in and out. A shadow casts itself over his face. Two sharp edges meet a large form as it moves ominously over the blonde hair man, who frowned slightly as the sun became blocked. Letting out a slight sigh, "You're in, my son." He smirked, "Stupid fox." While his words may have sounded harsh, their intention was playful, a sign of their friendship and mutual respect. "Look here you, snot-nosed little shit," the demon fox growled, sitting down next to the whisker-faced young man. The silence started comfortably, but Naruto found it deafening within a few moments. He knew what Kurama wanted to say. It's the same thing the fox had been telling him since he arrived in the mindscape. Time didn't function under the same rules of the real world. Distinguishing or tracking how much time has elapsed in one world versus the other was not a simple process. While not impossible, it's close to it. "Are you planning just to stay here forever, or are you going to get out of here so I can take a nap?" The demon growled and was serious. The fox was tired of having a guest invading his space. It was his space, after all. The fact it existed within Naruto's mind didn't matter. The fox enjoyed running around the grassy fields and forests, conquered within the mindscape. He didn't want anyone to see him running a frolicking. He had an image to maintain as an ominous demon. "What, are you tired of me hanging around here?" Naruto didn't open his eyes to look at his massive friend. "Haven't I earned a little break? I mean, I saved the fucking world from the source of all chakra. Hell, without her, you wouldn't exist." The blonde spoke in a very matter-of-fact tone. The massive creature growled in annoyance. "You can't stay here forever. There is a world out there for you. Plus, you owe me my freedom." The demon turned and positioned his snout directly above his jailer's face, narrowing his eyes, baring his teeth a bit, while unconsciously flailing his 9 tails around, generating air currents. "Did you forget our agreement?" Kurama spoke with an edge of anger and a bit of disappointment. He was not trying to hide anger if the blonde had forgotten, and would not hesitate to express his anger if needed. There was also a feeling of betrayal. The fox became increasingly concerned that the first human whom he placed trust and considered a true friend might have just been using him like so many others. Naruto cracked an eye and met the demon scowling at him, instantly smirking again. He thought to himself how he would have been afraid to meet the fox as a child. Now he just thought it funny when the fuzzball tries to be scary. He reached up and smacked the creature's nose. "I have not forgotten, and how could you think that I would do such a thing?" A grin pulled on the corners of his lips. "Jackass," was his last word before going back to his restful state of doing nothing. The fox continued to stare, and his annoyance multiplied. This insolent human thinks he could hide there forever. That's not going to happen. Kurama thought for a few moments and recalled feeling a frequent presence in the outside world. It was currently absent, but it had been around more than any of the others, and Fox knew whom the chakra belonged, the young Hyuga girl. Despite being locked away for so many years, Kurama had come to understand that the girl had an interest in Naruto. Her presence never wavered or changed even after all of Naruto's secret coming to light. He also genuinely was willing to tolerate the girl. High praise from a demon, though he would never admit that fact to anyone, out loud. "Alright kid," his voice was just as ominous but lower in volume. He wanted to be sincere with the teen. He cared for Naruto, yet another thing he would never admit to anyone. "You are getting to be a pain in the ass hanging around like you own the place. I want to sleep and enjoy this space by myself. Besides, it's not good for you to hold up in here constantly." But his words didn't get a response, not even an eyebrow twitch. Adding to the beast's frustration, Naruto knew how to work Demon's nerves, but the boy also knew Kurama would not hurt him too much. Sharp teeth flashed along with a low guttural rumble of anger, but before Kurama uttered a word. "Why should I go back?" The simple question took Kurama aback with some surprise and a bit of sadness. The beast knew what Naruto was saying, and he saw the things the boy saw, experienced what he experienced, felt the pain and loneliness. In some ways, the pair could understand each other much more than anyone else. "I know what you're asking, and I also know what you are feeling." Naruto opened his mouth to retort, but Kurama didn't give him a chance and kept speaking. "You're lonely. That's the long and the short of the matter. You're also afraid to face the life you endured as a child, but that's not the life you have now. The fox paused a moment to let his words sink into the blonde's thick skull. Think about all those around you who helped and supported you over the years. Finally, Naruto reacted with furrowed eyebrows and a frown forming. You don't get it, do you? Kurama growled in annoyance, then enlighten me, please. I am grateful for my friends, and I probably would be dead, and the world destroyed without their help, but things are different now. Sasuke came back, which means that Sakura will be likely taking care of him and then he'll have to answer for what he has done over the years. Everyone else was a Chunin. Hell, Shikamaru made Jonin, so they won't have time for me and have their own lives and careers to think about. The last part of his small speech showed the pain that he was trying to hide. Stop making excuses. Do you honestly think that any of those friends of yours would walk away from you after everything that has happened? Kurama snorted and sat down next to Naruto. I know for a fact that you are also aware, that all of those people closest to you have been by your side waiting for you to wake up. Yes, they have lives and careers, and life moves on. But you know there is one among that group who has been there almost constantly. Do you not owe them your gratitude? Kurama didn't want to speak for the young woman, it was not his place, and they both needed to confront their mutual feelings each in their own way. But that didn't mean he couldn't push the clueless young man. Naruto snorted in derision at the fox's comment. Yeah right, whatever. You only want me to get out so you can run and frolic around like a fool and don't want me to laugh at you. Naruto's mental image of the giant demon skipping like a schoolgirl made him chuckle. Who cares enough to sit around waiting for me to wake up? Don't be such a dumb ass. You know who it is, and I am not going to tell you. You will have to wake up and find out for yourself. With that said, Kurama stood up, blocking out the sun for a moment. He was too annoyed both with his blonde container for being so hard-headed and blind, as well as with himself for letting the kid get to him. The time for talk had come and gone. Now he just wanted to run through the forest. Hinata stood toe-to-toe looking at the two Anbu. She would not back down from the pair who both stood about a head taller, but she had faced worse. She would not be denied visiting with her love or lunch, not her father, and definitely not the two goons who stood before her. Hinata-sama, please come with us, Bear stated flatly. She eyed the man who had spoken and had no intention of backing down. Bear's partner stood to her left, and his body was tense and ready for action. Both men knew whom they were dealing with and not to underestimate or treat her with kid gloves. The young woman had stood against pain to defend the hero of Konoha years ago and proved herself to be very capable in a fight. Bird sensed things were escalating. Without a word or fist thrown, he knew his partner was a member of the Hyuga branch and would not defy Hyuga Hiashi. We do not wish this situation to become escalated, the man interjected. Hinata was in no mood to deal with anyone. She was hungry, tired and wanted to be left alone to carry on her mission. The pair of men were pushing her patience to the limit, and trying to be polite or composed was not a priority. Then leave, she said bluntly. Go back to whatever you were doing, Bird-san, and take Bear-san with you. That way we don't have to worry about things becoming escalated. She spoke with an edge to her voice as a sign that she was not going to be pushed around by the men. Her inner self stood in full battle armor with the intention of fighting to the death. She hadn't taken her eyes away from Bear while addressing Bird, as if she knew he was the leader of the pair. While Hinata was not mission-ready, she was a kunoichi. As such, she was never wholly unarmed, and she was far from defenseless despite what some might assume about her. The three shinobi were well aware of the situation, along with a growing crowd for civilians, some of them whispering and gossiping to each other. A breeze blew through the silence, and all eyes were upon the three shinobi in a standoff. One driven by love, the others were motivated by duty. All of them were ready to do what was needed. Are you going to comply with our order and the request of Hiashi-sama? If you do not, we will take you by force. Bear spoke with a bit of disdain in his words. The meaning of his statement did not escape her ears. Hinata knew the man was a Hyuga and had an idea of whom she was dealing. The man's name was Koga, a branch family member. One of her family members who was an outspoken advocate for the branch family. As noble as his intention might have been in the past, she was no longer willing to be intimidated by any member of her family. She respected her father, but she would not bend a knee to anyone. Plus, Koga was standing in her way, trying to deny her access to Naruto, and she would not tolerate any of it. Damn it, this is getting out of hand too fast, and I don't want to get into a fight. It seems that father has the whole clan looking for me and including those in the Anbu. Hinata's thoughts raced trying to think of ideas to defuse the situation. Only two options came to mind, fight or yield, but neither was acceptable. If she fought them, the collateral damage would likely be extensive, plus she would probably be imprisoned and not be able to continue her mission. If she yielded to them, it would show weakness and might result in her confinement to the Hyuga compound. As a member of the main branch, diplomacy and negotiation have been something ingrained from early childhood. But some of the same lessons were also taught to the branch member children. Raising her hand slightly, causing the two men to flinch slightly, but her shy smile lulled them into a false sense of taking the upper hand in the confrontation. I do not wish to fight you. There have been far too many conflicts in the streets of Konoha over the years, and I don't think any of us want to contribute to that fact. Bear scoffed at her statement, but she pretended to ignore him. Bird stepped forward between the others. Since we agree, please come with us. He spoke in an even and measured tone. I am sorry, but I cannot do that at the moment. The Hokage has assigned me a mission, and I intend to see it through. Koga's eyes narrowed behind his mask, and he gritted his teeth in annoyance. While they were of the same clan as such, the head of the family leads them. However, the Hokage was the village leader, and any orders given may supersede a clan head in matters of missions or village safety. The Hyuga are no exception. As a loyal member of the Hyuga, Bird was more interested in carrying out the orders of the clan leader. Hinata-sama, your father has been searching for you and has an important matter to discuss with you immediately. Bear spoke in an authoritative but condescending tone, like she was an obstinate child. But his tone and the underlying meaning did not go unnoticed by Hinata. The Anbu had been adding to her ire, and she was just done. Done with him, done with the mighty Hyuga clan, done with her father's superior attitude. Bear-san, thank you for relaying the message. You have done your job well as the personal massager for the great Hyuga clan. The last of her statement came out in a sarcastic and equally condescending tone. You will? He realized his words and voice were elevated, earning a glare from his bird-masked partner. Bear cleared his throat and tried to compose himself. You should report to your father immediately. Since you are a member of the main branch family and the heiress, I believe that obedience is required when the clan head beckons. He was trying to maintain an appearance of neutrality, even though it was a pathetic attempt and anyone listening to the conversation would know he was a Hyuga. He was doing the clan's bidding under the auspices of the Anbu. Hinata decided to have some fun and show him that she was not a fool, nor a little girl that would simply shirk her shinobi responsibilities. Again, thank you Anbu-san, I appreciate your diligence. The message must be of vital importance. I guess it's a matter of village security since the Hokage obviously allowed the Hyuga to use the Anbu for clan matters. She had to use all of her willpower to stop from laughing or giggling. She knew full well that his actions were not approved or authorized by Kakashi. By reminding Koga that such permission would never have been given, his lie to the contrary could be tantamount to treason and meant as a warning to the branch member. Koga knew he was getting dangerously close to a line that could end his career as an Anbu, as well as cast an unfavorable light on his family. His partner also knew what was going on and decided that things needed to end. Bear, you have delivered the message, and we have other matters to attend. So, we should allow Hinata-sama to carry on with her business and attend to her family affairs. Hanabi moved to stand next to her sister, sensing that tensions were not running as high as they were a few minutes ago. Hinata placed a hand on her sister's shoulder and gave a small squeeze of reassurance. Don't worry Hanabi-chan, they are leaving, and we can get some lunch before going home. She spoke gently to the young girl but never took her eyes off of Koga. Her small smirk was a fuck you to the third Hyuga, and they both knew there wasn't anything he could do to change anything. Without another word, both Anbu disappeared in a swirl of air and replaced by a pair of green leaves. The Hyuga sisters breathed out a collective sigh of relief and their bodies relaxed. I don't know if I'm hungry anymore Hinata-ni-chan. I know, we can just go home if you want. I really want to go to the hospital to check on Naruto-kun, but I don't want father sending anyone else. No, we can get something to eat. I think it was just those two jerks, assholes. Hanabi-chan. Hinata was flabbergasted by her younger sister's outburst, even though she should not be that surprised. That's no way to speak, especially for a young girl like you. The genin blushed at her sister's words and felt a bit ashamed but quickly got over it. I agree, a young woman should not talk that way. A new voice made the pair spun around and saw the former fifth Hokage leaning against the wall of a building. The older woman had her arms crossed over her ample bosom and her left foot flat against the wall. You did well, Hinata. I'm glad you saw the situation for what it was, and trust me, I am going to have a conversation with Kakashi along with Hiashi about the behavior of the one in a bear mask. She spoke ominously and with an amount of deadly seriousness in her voice. Pushing off of the wall and walking to Hinata, Tsunade wore a small smile of approval. I heard everything, and don't worry about them. While I don't know if he was telling the truth about your father having an urgent matter for you, I do have some news that you will be interested in. She smiled. Actually, I know you will find it very interesting. Hinata's heart leapt in anticipation. The other women's words sounded ominous, and she became a bit worried. Her mind went to one place, or more specifically one person. Please tell me he's alright? Did that horrible nurse hurt or do something to Naruto-kun? If she did, I'd kill her. I will hunt her down and wreak my vengeance upon her. Tsunade ignored Hinata's comments for the moment but would ask her about it. He woke up, Hinata. Her words were simple, even, but betrayed a hint of relief. As soon as the words hit the brunette's ears, said woman didn't wait for another word to be uttered. She just turned and ran in the direction of the hospital, her with heart pounded with excitement and tears of joy filled her eyes. He's awake, I can't believe I wasn't there. I have to get there and see him. I have to tell him how I feel and make sure he understands how worried I have been for him. Hinata's mind was in overdrive with thoughts ranging from practical to absurd. She had to rein herself in and focus on not overreacting or doing something rash when she got to Naruto's room. Now a few streets away, Tsunade and Hanabi were left watching the love-sick Madden disappear into the horizon. She didn't let me finish. He woke up, but by the time we got to him he was out again. Hanabi felt for her sister. She's going to be really upset when she gets there. Nodding in agreement, Tsunade tapped the brunette's arm. Come on. I'll walk you home. I need to speak with your father in private anyway. A wave of anger emanated from the older woman, and it was apparent to Hanabi that there was going to be trouble at the compound when they arrived. Well, Dad, I hope you are ready because it looks like hell is coming your way. Fire and smoke rose into the night sky with screams and the sound of timbers cracking as buildings collapsed on some of the unlucky souls that were inside. People ran from their home while some ran towards the disruption and source of the destruction. What is that? I don't know, but we need to stop it. Shinobi leapt between rooftops in the direction of a creature that appeared to be an enormous fox. Some launched long-range attacks while others moved closer for a better chance of striking the rampaging beast that towered over the buildings it destroyed along its path. Screams of fear, pain, and desperation filled the air as villagers tried to get away from the danger. Shinobi called orders to each other while others tried to save as many lives as possible. Ono Yuru ran in the opposite direction of the fleeing civilians. She was trying to get to her house in one of the densely populated residential districts. The middle-aged woman was of average build and stature with hair that was once dark green at one time but was nearly all gray. Yuru abandoned her post in the hospital when news of a strange creature rampaging through the area where she lived. Her husband, Riku, would have been at home with their 4-year-old daughter, Raku. Yuru always thought that Raku was the spitting image of the girl's father, a thick head of deep brown hair and a pair of bright purple eyes. The little girl was spunky and energetic and would likely be a tomboy when she got older, wanting to play sports with the boys. Nothing mattered, not her job, not the people who were injured or dead, nothing. All that Yuru cared about was the only family she had in the world and the only people who mattered. However, the world had other plans. The woman ran down the street that she had lived for many years but didn't recognize anything. The corner market was gone, replaced with a pile of rubble, and in the distance, she saw a fire burning where her home should have stood. The distance seemed to fade, and within a few moments, she stood before what had once been her sanctuary. But the building was burning. She tried to get through what was the front door, but the flames burned too intensely for her to proceed further. She cried out their names over and over but heard nothing except for the sounds of incinerating timbers and building materials. She had convinced herself that her family made it to the shelters and were safe. A few hours later, Yuru found that her assumptions were incorrect, and after a few days of agonizing worry, the woman realized her greatest fear had come true. Her husband and daughter were dead, burned alive in what was once their happy home. Yuru swore vengeance on the creature that had killed her family, and anyone associated with the beast. She wanted to leave her life as a nurse to become a shinobi but had no talent or ability to fill the role, and she was too old to make such a dramatic life change. Years later, Yuru learned through rumor and gossip. The fox that killed her family was not destroyed but sealed within a boy. A boy who walked the streets freely and without restraint. Enraged, Yuru and other villagers who had lost loved ones banded together to exact revenge on a blonde-haired boy. But there was a law that was meant to protect the boy, limiting what they could do to him. Fate was a strange thing. Sometimes it denied or granted at seemingly random or inopportune times, but years after losing everything, Yuru thought it finally stood on her side by delivering the source of her anger and pain in the form of a one-armed Naruto. The demon boy was now in her charge, and she could exact her revenge. In the woman's mind, the boy had the demon fox sealed within him, and they were one and the same, both were equally dangerous. Standing over the blonde-haired young man, Yuru held a scalpel in her left hand, seething while mentally reliving the events of 18 years ago. The day her husband and daughter were taken from her life. She recalled having to try and identify the charred remains of the two people she loved the most. Every day she had to live without them. Over the past weeks, she took little bits of revenge, cutting him whenever she could. The beast inside of him would heal the wounds within a few minutes, but she would feel a small sense of retribution. Now her time might be limited since a report that he had woken up earlier in the morning. He could wake up again at any time. She needed to exact her vengeance and finish the demon before it could hurt anyone else. Within nearly the same moments leading up to a potentially fatal blow being struck down on the uncourteous young man, Hyuga Hinata was rushing toward Naruto's room. However, her method of reaching the young man was unconventional, at least for civilians. The Hyuga heiress was rushing up the side of the hospital building with chakra applied to her feet. Reaching his window from the outside, she expected to find the energetic blonde up and about, arguing with the staff or attempting to leave without permission. But what she saw shocking and made her blood run cold with shock. Hinata pinned Yuru to the floor. Her bloodline limit activated, her right hand charged with chakra ready to strike the nurse dead for her actions. The Hyuga was running on baser instincts and pure rage. Fortunately, Hinata was able to overcome her knee-jerk reaction to kill the woman for her actions. Part of Hinata wanted to destroy the woman, kill her, bring her back and kill her again. Hinata's face showed her rage. Her body shivered with the surge of adrenaline as she locked gaze with the other woman. "You better explain yourself quickly, you bitch. Get the fuck off of me, you stupid Hyuga whore." The woman yelled back and swung the blade towards Hinata's face. But the effort was wasted when Hinata grabbed her wrist. "That demon killed my family, and it must die." The woman struggled against Hinata, who sat on top of the older women, a hand around each wrist, effectively pinning the scalpel to the floor. Hinata's grip tightened while she applied chakra into the woman's wrist, numbing ulnar and median nerves. The blade fell to the floor harmlessly. "What do you mean he killed your family?" Hinata tried to calm herself, but her mind was still enraged. She knew that she could easily kill the women with complete justification, but she couldn't do it. Despite her fury, she could not kill a person in cold blood. Especially a person who was not trained in combat and was only acting out of emotion. That was not an excuse, it would not be forgiven or forgotten. "It killed my family." The woman sobbed as tears rolled down her temples onto the floor. "They burned to death when the fox demon attacked, and that boy holds the creature that killed them. I have to avenge them." Taken aback a bit, Hinata knew about the Kyuubi and the events that caused so much pain, anger, and loneliness for Naruto. She had seen the horrible things caved into his door, heard the things they said to him, seen him hide away from the world. But she was not prepared to actually see the pain and hear the words of someone who had been a victim of the attack. "He is not a demon, and he didn't kill your family." Hinata's words were even and calm. She surprised herself but continued, "He was just born during the attack. And Uchiha had freed the fox during his birth." She was not revealing any secrets, as everything was now common knowledge that came out after the war. "That boy holds the demon fox, I had to kill it. If the boy dies, then so will the demon." "You're wrong, the fox didn't do it intentionally, it was being controlled and made to do those awful things." You need to understand that Naruto and the Kyuubi would not have done such things without reason. Hinata knew that Naruto was a noble person and would never hurt innocent people, and she hoped the fox would do the same. The pinned woman struggled to move, but Hinata had the upper hand and was much stronger. Consigning herself to defeat, she merely said, "Just kill me. I can't live this life, and now I am going to be jailed anyway, so just kill me and get it over with. Save the cost of a trial." The gray-haired woman's words were low but serious. Part of Hinata wanted to fulfill the request, and her mind presented over a dozen ways in which the other woman could be dispatched. "I can't do that." She looked at the woman's name tag and learned her name for the first time. "I can't do that, Ono-san, it is not my place to judge you." The nurse began to sob uncontrollably, and Hinata felt for the other woman. Hinata rolled the woman over onto her stomach and bound her wrists. The older woman didn't resist or stop sobbing as Hinata did what was required. She may have sympathy for Yuru, but that didn't mean that the woman's actions could be overlooked. "Tsunade-sama will be here shortly, and you will answer for your actions," the brunette said calmly. "For what it's worth, I am sorry your family died, but that is not an excuse for the attempted murder of an innocent man." There was no reply except for more crying. Hinata felt bad for the woman. Despite how much she wanted to hate the nurse, it just wasn't in Hinata's nature. That didn't mean that Hinata would forgive or forget Yuru's actions. She looked at Naruto, who was still in his bed, with no knowledge of the events that had occurred a few moments ago. An hour had passed, despite it feeling much longer. Hinata's emotions were still running high. It didn't matter that Yuru was on her way to the interrogation section to be questioned. Ultimately, the woman was facing prosecution and imprisonment. After stopping the Yuru and herself from making life-altering mistakes, Hinata was trying to understand the other woman's actions. She was horrified to learn Yuru's motives, the loss of her whole family. An injury that she never recovered from, and turned her misguided hate toward the wrong person. No matter how much she tried to explain to the woman that Naruto was a child and had nothing to do with the attack by the Kyuubi, it didn't matter. Yuru's hatred was ingrained and had poisoned her soul. Fortunately, the sudden scuffle and shouting drew the attention of hospital staff and ultimately security. Hinata stood in the room with her sleeping Prince Charming, the current Hokage, Hitaki Kakashi, and his predecessor Senju Tsunade was also present. Hinata also learned that her father was on his way, according to Ram-masked Anbu, who was standing guard outside of the room. Hinata gave her statement regarding the incident, including what she had witnessed and what the gray-haired woman had said. She told both of the Hokages about the abuse that the nurse had been inflicting on Naruto and had been assured that the woman would be dealt with appropriately. While looking over the sleeping war hero, Hinata noticed that the cut to his arm had healed with no indication of a cut except for a small trickle of blood that ran down from the wound on his right bicep. She brushed the droplet away with her finger and rubbed the fluid between her pointer finger and thumb. Absent-mindedly, she stared at the bright red liquid and worried about his safety. She started to get angry with herself for not being there and started what-ifing the events of the day. Fortunately, before her train of thought got too far off the rails, the hospital room door was abruptly flung open, and Hyuga Hiyashi entered without saying a word or asking permission to enter the room. Blatant rudeness was not in his nature unless he was angry or felt there was no reason to show respect. Hinata knew this all too well, since her father often did the same thing when she was younger. But that behavior was halted abruptly after an incredibly awkward incident when he just opened the door, and she was dressing after a shower. The man learned two things that day. The first, that his daughter was indeed growing into a woman, and the second was that he needed to knock, regardless of his mood. This time Hiyashi was annoyed and angry that Hinata had missed an important clan meeting and effectively shown disrespect toward the clan elders and himself. "Hinata," his voice was cold and sharp, cutting through the quiet of the room like a knife, causing the young woman to jump slightly. Father, what are you doing here?" Hinata cursed at herself for stammering and stuttering like a little girl. Stepping forward, he answered the question, "Looking for you, young lady." His anger was evident to the point he didn't acknowledge the other persons in the room. "I don't know why you think that you don't have obligations to the clan or that you don't have to attend meetings." After a moment, Hinata collected and composed herself quickly and looked her father straight in the eyes. "I apologize for my absence. I was been assigned a mission by Hokage-sama and was performing my duties as a shinobi of the leaf." She didn't break eye contact with her father but gestured toward Kakashi. Hiyashi, she is correct. I assigned her the mission this morning. It's expected to last for an extended period of time. Kakashi stepped in between the father and daughter. I am sure you understand that missions assigned take priority, and Hinata acted properly. Tsunade watched the tense interaction with delight before stepping in to get her own digs on the Hyuga leader. He was an arrogant prick and she had never been one to knuckle under for Hiyashi or the Hyuga elders. I am sure she would have informed you and would have worked out her obligations between the village and the Hyuga if she had been given the chance. Hiyashi turned his gaze to the slug Sannin, who didn't look away or feel any level of intimidation. Lady Tsunade, you are no longer Hokage and do not speak for the office you once held. Please do not speak to matters that are above your current station. Tsunade perked an eyebrow and was ready to break the man in half, like a twig. Stepping forward she spoke, you watch yourself Hiyashi. I could pull your spine through your mouth if I wanted to and there isn't a damn thing you can do about it. The woman was absolutely sure of her words and would do it to prove her point. Now, there won't be any need for more fighting. Kakashi stepped in to diffuse the tension. Kakashi, I learned something disturbing a short time ago. The slug princess said, would you like to hear about it? She didn't look away from Hiyashi and gave him a small smirk. I'm sure it can wait until later, Tsunade. Well, it involves the Hyuga and their use of the Anbu as their personal search and massager team, so I thought it would be important to bring it to the attention of the Hokage. I am a diligent shinobi of the leaf after all. Tsunade was enjoying herself as she watched Hiyashi's face betray him. The Hokage sighed and internally echoed a common phrase from a certain Nara. What a drag, but he needed to be diplomatic. I'm sure that such activity was a simple misunderstanding. Hiyashi certainly knows that such actions would carry serious consequences for any clan, especially their leader or elders. If such an illegal order were to be issued to clan members. Hiyashi, being an experienced diplomat and politician, knew he'd been caught and needed to be careful. If you have a specific accusation to make, then please do so. If someone has been representing their actions as sanctioned by my clan, then we Hyuga will investigate the matter and take the appropriate action. It was one of your clansmen who stopped Hinata and Hanabi on the street and basically tried to bring them back to your family's complex by force. Even after Hinata indicated she was assigned a mission and would speak with you upon her return in the evening. The Anbu in question had implied that you Hiyashi had requested that the Anbu locate and bring Hinata to you. But we all know you would never do such a thing. Tsunade finished with a questioning tone but knew exactly what she was doing. Alright, I am sure that the Hyuga can deal with this matter internally, Kakashi spoke to the others in the room. But, I do want to make this clear and understood. Hinata has been assigned a mission within the village and bearing a serious incident or emergency will remain assigned for the foreseeable future. Hiyashi's jaw was clenched and his annoyance was apparent, but he knew to keep silent. Kakashi turned around to look at Hinata. I know you were going to speak with your father when time permitted. I am also sure that you'll be able to balance your shinobi duties and clan obligations. The silver-haired man's man was hidden only slightly by his mask. Hinata couldn't speak as all eyes fell on her, she simply nodded. Good, now that that's settled. Kakashi paused a moment and moved around to stand next to Hiyashi. Hinata, I think you should tell your father about the events that recently occurred. Hinata reacted with a slight gasp but steeled her resolve when her father's icy stare landed on her once again. After spending about 20 minutes recounting the incident with former nurse Yuru, Hiyashi stood silently processing his eldest daughter's words. Hinata, you have brought honor to the Hyuga clan. A rarity but something that has happened in more recent years. What a backhanded compliment. This guy is an even bigger ass than I had ever thought. Tsunade thought as her fist clenched with anger and annoyance. The young brunette's shoulders slumped at her father's words. He acts like I can't do anything right and when I do, he makes it all about the clan. I think you are missing the point, Hiyashi, Kakashi spoke up. Hinata saved Naruto's life and if I recall correctly, this was the second time. Be that as it may. Hokage-sama, his words had a sneer to them. As you said, Hinata is on a mission as a shinobi of the leaf and like any other, aided a fellow shinobi. Hiyashi's words were still cold and unfeeling. As such, I will overlook her absence earlier today, but that does not mean that future transgressions will be tolerated. Tsunade had enough and cut in abruptly. Your daughter saved the life of a man who saved the whole world. You could cut her a bit of slack and at least give her some kind of praise for her actions." The blonde woman stepped closer. "You pompous ass. You may be the former Hokage, but that does not give you the right to speak to how I raise or speak to my own daughter." Hiashi's practiced calm exterior was starting to crack and show his level of anger. "I think we can all agree that Hinata's actions were exemplary and she acted in the best interest of everyone, especially Naruto." Kakashi was getting tired of having to mediate. "We need to wait until the report from the interrogation unit and allow Hinata to carry on her duties." The silver-haired man gave the young woman a knowing look with a smile behind his mask. "As you say," Hiashi knew he could not say anything to the contrary but would be sure to have words with his eldest, behind closed doors. "Hinata, you will see me this evening when you return, and I expect you to explain the details of this mission." Before Kakashi or Tsunade could respond, the Hyuga leader had left the room. "You know your dad is a real ass," Tsunade said out loud with no remorse. Kakashi simply shook his head. Hinata fell into her familiar hospital room chair next to Naruto's bed. An exhausted breath left her lips after her father, the former Godem and current Rokudame, had taken their leave. The room was finally quiet with the exception of the hospital monitors that steadily beeped. Her eyes felt heavy and the events of an hour ago crashed into her and the mental walls that held her in check crumbled. The young woman was not a drinker in any way, but she really wanted a shot or three of a strong sake. Leaning back, the brunette folded her hands over her lap and closed her eyes. "Just a quick nap. You don't mind, do you, Naruto-kun?" But he didn't respond as usual. "Well, it's kind of like sleeping together." She blushed and giggled to herself while leaning forward and placing her hand of his bicep, giving it a slight squeeze before settling back into the large chair. "Hiashi, have you spoken with your eldest daughter?" A smooth and arrogant voice spoke. "No, elder, she has been assigned a mission and currently performing her duties. I did have a moment to instruct her to report to me when she returned this evening." "This is most inconvenient," the old man spoke. He was short with bony features and light gray hair. "You are to speak with the Hokage and have the mission assigned to someone else. If that young fool does not do as he is told, remind him who we Hyuga are and that we are the most powerful and prestigious clan of this village. I understand that a union between the Hyuga and Wasabi family from the land of tea will help to continue our prosperity. But I will not taint the clan by making an inappropriate request to have any member removed from a mission for our benefit." Hiashi's voice showed his annoyance and anger. "You forget yourself, Hia." The man was cut off when the clan head slammed his fist against the mahogany desktop. "Did you not hear my words? I am perfectly aware of the situation and I will make sure things happen in due course. Taking action as you suggest will likely lead to more problems, family." Hiashi's scowl was prominent and he made no attempt to hide his feelings. "Hinata is strong-willed and would not willingly drop a mission, and if she found out that I made a request to remove her, I don't know what she might do. If that is all you need, elder, I have some work to complete before Hinata arrives. Just make sure that girl does her duty. Remind her that family comes first, and our benefit is her benefit." The older man spoke as he walked out of the office without another word. During Hinata's nap, her mind was not filled with intimate moments. Her mind conjured the pair sitting quietly together on a park bench in the warm sun. His left arm around her shoulder, holding her close, enjoying each other's company. She snuggled close to him as the sunlight shone down over their form, as if they were the only two people in the world. "I love you, Hinata. I love you, Naruto-kun." She placed a kiss on his cheek as if it was the millionth time. The moment was completely natural for them both. Hinata's waking mind hung over the happy couple. She felt a yearning for the moment to be real and to hear him say the words to her. But the moment was interrupted as the feeling of a new energy suddenly intruded and her shinobi senses kicked in to wake up immediately. Opening her eyes and sitting up quickly, Hinata was surprised to meet the gaze of Naruto. It took a moment to register what was happening, but something felt off. "Naruto-kun?" she asked hesitantly as her mind cleared the fog of sleep. He didn't respond but formed a malevolent grin. Hinata nearly leapt out of the chair and showered Naruto with kisses, but something didn't feel right. She shuddered slightly and realized what the problem was. His eyes were a bright red with a vertical pupil slit. Gasping in realization, "You're not Naruto-kun? Are you?" Her guard went up as she stood. He nodded slightly before speaking. "You have nothing to fear from me." His voice sounded like Naruto's but much deeper. You are the Kyuubi, right? Nodding his head, to you humans, yes. Her initial surprise and shock quickly wore off as she realized to whom she was speaking and stood up. The possessed blonde made no motion or action and simply watched the young woman curiously for a few moments. A small smirk graced his lips. You really are an interesting human. It's no wonder he likes you. The creature paused a moment. Too bad he's too dumb to realize his own feelings. The demon's words made Hinata shudder again while her face flushed brightly. He likes me? Of course, he does. You foolish human. I have watched you for many years, and I know you are smart enough to realize he cares for you. The demon rolled his host's eyes slightly but smirked knowingly. The demon's words surprised Hinata, and without realizing it she lowered her guard as her mind reeled with words. He cares for you, bounced between her ears. She felt her face engulf in the burning heat of embarrassment, laced with joy and hope. Pushing her feelings aside for the moment and composing herself to the best of her ability at the moment, Hinata realized she had barely said a word. She stuttered like her childhood self when being scolded by her father. I am honored that you would speak with me. She blurted out with a slightly raised voice. It's nice to meet you finally. The young woman's words caught the fox's attention. You have kept Naruto-kun safe for so many years and probably know him better than anyone in the world, Hinata said while bowing her head to the fox in human clothing. Hinata's words once again were unexpected. The fox was expecting her to scream in panic and run away in terror. But the young woman didn't appear to be scared in the least, nor was she upset by his presence. In all of his years, every human he had ever encountered was terrified of him. Something he had enjoyed and admittedly had cultivated such reactions. You honor me, young one, and I am happy we can have this conversation together. Naruto's body stretched and flexed all of the muscles that had not moved for weeks. The demon inspected the bandages at the end of what was its host's right arm. Interesting how fragile you humans are, fucking Uchiha. His words held anger to them. Hinata observed Naruto stand up and begin moving around as if nothing had happened and had to continually remind herself that there was a demon in control and not the man whom she loved. Kyuubi-kun. The honorific caught his attention. Never had someone used such a familiar term with him except for his siblings and father. Never a human. I don't wish to sound ungrateful or selfish but… Her words were cut off. But you want to know where the knucklehead is, don't you? I didn't mean to. Hinata stammered and stuttered to answer. A deep bellowing laugh filled the room. Kurama knew precisely what was happening and found that having some fun with Hinata was too much to resist. She was such a polite and composed woman that all he had to do is hint at some level of insult or offense she would revert to a scared little girl. It was one of her endearing qualities that showed her true nature. She was honest and genuine in all aspects of life, especially when it came to his blonde container. Holding up the only hand available. No need to explain. I know you have been worried about him and I can assure you that he is safe, and I am not holding him back. I am relieved to hear that. Hinata paused a few moments. Why hasn't he woken up? Was the injury too severe? The question was simple to answer, and in any other circumstances, the fox would have answered honestly or bluntly. However, with Hinata, the truth might hurt the young Hyuga. Something that he genuinely didn't want to inflict and knew that Naruto would not have wanted either. Don't worry, he is fine and is taking a little bit of time to rest himself mentally. His words were not untrue or deceitful but did omit Naruto's feelings uselessness after fulfilling his promise. Looking out the window, not that the boy had much in the way of mental capacity that required rest to begin with. The joke was meant to lighten the mood of the room, but he didn't realize that Hinata might not have heard his words or saw them as a joke. Turning his head to look at her standing in the same spot as she had been, he saw a tear hit the floor. Her face was down, and her shoulders lightly shuddered as she tried to hold back a flood. I miss him. Her words could be felt, even by a demon. He knew she was hurting and upset even without her words. Turning towards her, he will return, I can promise you that. He's getting to be a pain in the ass. Hinata managed to give half a snicker at the obviously annoyed fox demon as she wiped the tears from her eyes and face. Knowing Naruto's personality, he could sometimes be overwhelming, but he had a big heart and endless energy. All of those things were what defined him and drew people to him. But the previous statement made her curious something. Can I ask you something? The possessed blonde perked an eyebrow. You just did, but you can ask something else if you want. He spoke with a fanned, humble attitude. He genuinely liked the girl, but she was sometimes too sweet, and it was effortless to tease her. However, he did respect her as a warrior. She stepped into danger and proved herself beyond capable on the battlefield. When do you think he will wake up? Is there anything he needs, or I can do for him to help? Her words spoke volumes about her concern and worry. The blonde laughed heartily at her question. She is so naive and innocent. It's honestly refreshing to hear genuine concern for the boy. I don't mean to laugh at you, but I couldn't help it. The Kyuubi felt a bit bad for laughing at her question. Her face showed her embarrassment as she turned away. Don't worry, young one, he is fine physically. It's just he is taking some personal time. As I just said, his words were true, but he didn't want to speak out of turn. It was not his place to discuss Naruto's feelings. Plus, he knew that Hinata would want to do something or try to get the boy back, but there was nothing she could do at the moment. Naruto had to return when he was ready, and not even the Bluenet nor the Fox could make him do otherwise. I have spoken with him repeatedly and told him in no uncertain terms to leave. He's so exhausting, but he wants to rest and relax. But I have told him plenty needs to be done and to get lost. Before she could realize her words, Hinata spoke out of pure emotion. He can relax with me. We can go to a hot spring or the beach or anywhere. Her words descended into tears. Anywhere, just come back, Naruto-kun, please. While the fox demon was not known for being sympathetic or a creature that felt for humans, aside from disdain, hatred or anger, seeing the young woman cry for Naruto was painful. He found that he wanted to make her stop at any cost. The feeling was disturbing and surprising. What the hell is wrong with me? This human girl is upset, and it's upsetting me. Clenching his fists for a moment to regain his composure and refocus his thoughts, pushing the uneasy feelings aside for the moment. I want him to return not just for you but for me as well. Hinata looked up, clearing the tears from her face. What do you mean? Having him lay around was fine for the first few days, but now he's just being lazy. Reminds me of that Nara who stares at the clouds all the time. The realization that the Kyuubi had been watching everything and everyone through Naruto's eyes had suddenly struck her. The demon knew everything about not only Naruto himself but also the people around him, herself included. While she was thinking, Naruto got back into the bed. I can only stay in control for a short period at the moment. I too am still weakened from that last fight and will require time to regain my former self. He boasted about his greatness. Another reason I want him out, so I can get some damn sleep. Quickly Hinata sat on the edge of the bed. Please tell him to come home. Tell him that I am waiting for him. She didn't try to hide anything and was determined to let Naruto know that she wanted him back in her life. Tell him. I want to talk to him and miss him so much. I will let him know. The demon smiled. I will even tell him. He made you cry, that should get him moving. No. Please don't. But her words were not heard, as the boy's eyes were closed, and he resumed his stoic pose in the bed. Damn it, she muttered to herself, as her shoulders sank while looking longingly at Naruto. Hinata could not stop her mind from running wild and repeating the conversation with the Kyuubi along with his words about Naruto. On the one hand, the demon reassured her that he was safe, but taking a mental health break, something she could understand, and if anyone in the world, the blonde-haired shinobi deserved it. However, the fact that he had retreated into his mind was very upsetting and equally alarming. Walking through the gates of her family's compound, she beardly acknowledged the guards as she moved past them in a fog of thought. As she neared the entrance to the main house, someone tapped her shoulder and startled her out of her daydream. Eeppp. She yelped in a very un-hyuga or shinobi way. Turning sharply and drawing a hidden blade from her person, Hinata drew down into a fight mode only to meet the gaze of a young branch member. The young woman jumped back when Hinata presented an aggressive stance. Hien. Hinata-sama, your presence is required in the family meeting hall. Hinata sighed as she relaxed and realized she reacted in a very aggressive way toward the young woman who was simply doing her job. I'm sorry if I scared you. No, I'm sorry for startling you, Hinata-sama. The young woman bowed politely. Please follow me to the hall. Hiyashi-sama has ordered me to escort you. What could father need so late? She relented. Please lead the way. Even though she was well aware of where she needed to go, Hinata followed the young woman. Minutes later the pair reached the door to the Hyuga family meeting hall, an area in which the council of elders met. Gatherings of both houses for funerals, weddings, meetings for dignitaries. Hinata stood before the shoji doors and knew her father along with the council of elders were waiting for her. There was no need for her bloodline to see that she was walking into the pre-verbal lion's den. Without another second of hesitation, she nodded to the other young woman and slid the door open and stepped through with a thud as the door closed as abruptly. The Hyuga clan main hall was a vast room. The ceiling stood over 4 meters tall with a vaulted form and longer than 100 meters, more than enough room for the whole clan and then some, if such things happened. Observing protocol and years of manners, Hinata knelt before her father and the council of elders. The old men flanked her father on both sides. If she were worried about the fossils, she might feel intimidated, but Hinata knew they were well beyond their prime years. Some were practically blind, and for a Hyuga that was nearly a fate worse than death. "Father, I understand that you wish to speak with me. What do we need to discuss that requires the council of honorable elders?" She nearly choked on her own words. "I am sure they have more pressing matters to attend to." She felt the scowls and glares become more intense, but she paid them no attention. They used to bother her but were just a bunch of old men who were desperate to hold onto the bits of power they once held. Some of them were likely half blind, deaf or both, but thanks to centuries of being Hyuga they hid it well. One of the old men, who was sitting to her father's left, spoke up before Hiyashi. "We are the clan elders and are involved in all matters involving our family. You would know that if you were a proper clan heir." She openly scowled at the man, not bothering to show how annoyed she was with his comments, but Hinata held her tongue, just barely. As she was about to respond, "You may have served the village as a shinobi, but have shirked your responsibilities to your family, station, and position as heir. As such, we the Elder Council have decided to strip you of the title of clan heir in favor of your sister. She has proven to be a much better Hyuga and will lead us to further prosperity." Hinata was stunned, hurt, furious and crushed all within the same moment. How could they say such things? Had she not proven herself capable during the pain attack, during the war, at every mission she took upon? "This old bastard has no idea what I have done, to serve the village and the clan." Her fists clenched upon her lap, her eyes were down staring at the tatami mat. But her pale skin was flushed red with rage, and she fought against her instincts to leap onto the platform and strike all of the ancient fossils dead. "Fuck you." Her words were low, but she didn't try to hide them. "Fuck you, you miserable old bastard." She looked straight at the man, her Byakugan active and on full display. The old man stiffened as Hiyashi looked on impassively. "How dare you speak to me like that?" The man stood, slowly but with somewhat impressive speed considering his age. "Guards, seize her. It's time she learns her place and where she will be spending the remainder of her life." A crooked sneer developed on his wrinkled lips. 2 branch members males rushed forward, but her reflexes and instincts fired as she was on her feet, ready to fight. The first man, Kaide, was the first come into Hinata's striking distance. He attempted to hit her inner right bicep but found that she quickly sidestepped his poor attempt and earned a hit to his rib cage. The young man fell to the floor gasping and writhing in pain. The injury was not fatal, but he would not be out of bed for a few weeks. Meanwhile, Hinata noticed the other young man. He hesitated after watching how quickly the ex-heiress had dispatched his partner and focused her attention squarely on him. "You don't want to be my opponent, or for you to get hurt. Please, stand down," she spoke firmly, not wanting to have to hurt anyone more. "Enough." Hiyashi stood up and effectively quelled the moment of disruption. "Yes, quite right, Hiyashi. Your daughter has proven she is not fit, and this display of blatant disrespect only reinforces our decision." Another old man spoke up. "I agree, this has gone far enough. Anbu, restrain this branch member." A man wearing a bear mask seemed to appear out of thin air, but Hinata was not impressed or intimidated. It was the same Anbu from a few days ago that was treated like a rag doll by Tsunade. Hinata remained ready, while she heard the comment by the old man and figured that they were going to try and place her in the branch house. But she would not allow the caged bird seal to be applied, and she would die before allowing such a disgusting and barbaric thing to touch her body. "You again. I guess Tsunade-sama's lesson did not reach you, Bear-san." Hinata smirked, remembering the former Hokage's demonstration. The Anbu clenched his kunai more, It's only because of her former station that I allowed her to treat me with such disrespect. Had it been in a less public place, I would have shown her why we Hyuga are the most powerful clan of the Leaf. You're arrogant and overconfident. It's unbecoming for Hyuga. Hinata was blunt and tired of the nonsense. She was not going to drop her guard. It was apparent that she could not even trust her own family. Arrest her. The elder who started the whole mess was instigating things further. The Anbu stepped forward and attempted to grab Hinata's arm, but she pulled away quickly and threw a palm strike that missed its mark. The man then threw a series of attempted strikes toward Hinata. The pair traded empty blows and missed attacks. However, Hinata didn't notice the quick movement of a seemingly harmless elder who remained silent since she walked into the room. The old man moved with extraordinary ability as he ran through a series of hand seals and threw a paper seal at Hinata's unprotected back. The seal immediately attached itself to the young woman's back and activated with a bright glow followed by a shriek of the former heiress. Dropping to her knees, desperately grasping at the middle of her back, Hinata had no luck with removing the paper tag. No, I can't move. I can't form chakra. Hinata's mind raced. The situation was desperate. In her mind, it was life or death. The seal was suppressing her chakra to the point that the world started to fall into a tunnel. Darkness rapidly moved in from the sides and consumed everything. Her last thought was of her failure to help Naruto, not being strong enough for him, not being fast enough to destroy the seal before it hit her. Despair moved in almost as rapidly as the darkness as she lost consciousness. A sudden gust of wind blew across a vast field of green grass. The burst of wind moved up a rolling hill. It tousled the blonde hair of a man who was lying in a black t-shirt and matching pants, his hands behind his head. His eyes closed, resting comfortably. Naruto's face contorted in annoyance but kept his eyes closed. What is going on? Kurama, who was sitting beside the blonde, looked down at Naruto and then to the sky. Clouds were moving in, and the blue skies became a deep shade of gray nearly instantly. He inhaled deeply, taking in the sense of the area around him. It was the mindscape, but he could sense energies within the outside world. Something significant had disrupted the normal flow of things. Something is wrong. The statement was simple but pointiest. Of course, there is something wrong. There's always something wrong, or some disaster or a tragedy. Tell me something I don't fucking know. Naruto's words were flat and disinterested, even opening his eyes. Kurama had been annoyed and pissed off at the blonde for the last few weeks. However, what the demon fox felt in that moment was something else: disappointment. Now you look here, you bag of flesh. The words dripped anger and venom. He had enough and was not going to stand for it any longer. It's time for you to fucking leave. Naruto sat up immediately. Not since he was a child had the fox spoken to him in such an angry way. It was similar to a parent scolding their child. I don't want to leave. And there isn't a damn thing you can do to make me. Kurama knew the statement was true. The mindscape was Naruto's after all, and the boy could quickly move them back to the dark sewers and the jail cell that he occupied for so many years. He had to protect himself, but also, he had an awful feeling about someone near to the boy's heart. Look, there is something wrong in the village. Some very wrong, and it's directly connected to you. What? Naruto's words were unsure. What do you mean in the village? Like pain level bad? No, nothing like that. I don't know exactly, but something is happening or has happened. The demon's words gave the blonde pause for a moment. What do you mean? His words were serious, and his eyes were focused. It was the look of a man who was ready to do battle. The look of a leader that could garner the entire world to fall into step behind. Smirking a little bit, the fox spoke. As I said, I don't know for sure, but that gust of wind and the sky changing so suddenly. His muzzle pointed upward. Those things are all tied to your emotions, either conscious or unconscious. Meaning that some part of you knows something is going on. Returning his gaze to the Jinchuriki. After a pregnant pause, Naruto sighed. I know. I felt a burst of energy. I also thought I heard someone say my name, but that would be silly. Who would talk about me? The question was honest, and he could not think of anyone who would need him. All of his guy friends, well, they were guys. Guys didn't worry about each other like that, and the girls, well, that would be completely absurd. Sure, he had a few moments with Hinata. She faced down pain. She helped him during the war and tried to protect him when from a near-fatal blow by the Ten Tails. But she was the heiress to the Hyuga. Why would she want anything to do with him? Look inside of yourself. You will know if someone close to you is in danger, and if that's not the case you still know something is wrong. Now go. Naruto thought back to a few moments ago and listened to the voice that called his name, and it sounded familiar. It seemed sad and scared. The thought of such a sweet voice being unhappy or in pain made his chest hurt. Naruto suddenly sat up in his hospital bed and caused the nurse who was checking his IV and performing her regular rounds to scream in surprise. The startled woman tried not to pee from the sudden shock but was unsuccessful as she ran to the washroom. He pulled the tubes and wires from his body, including a Foley catheter. He would regret that later. He ignored the frightened young woman as he began to take in natural energy, searching for his friends. He found Sakura a few floors above near Sasuke, check. His former sensei was in the Hokage Tower, check. Pushing forward, he felt so many people, some he knew and some he had never met. Ino was in her family's flower shop, and her teammates were in a barbecue restaurant. After what felt like an hour, but in reality, only a few seconds had elapsed, Naruto found the problem. His blood ran cold, losing focus for a moment causing his sage mode to fail. His eyebrows furrowed together, and his eyes flared red as his body became enveloped in a red chakra with a single tail waving in an agitated way through the slit in the back of his hospital gown. Not the most formidable battle attire. Resisting the urge to just rush off in a hospital gown, he found a pair of black shorts and t-shirt. A red streak burst through a hospital window, showering the garden below with broken shards of glass and wood. The red ball of energy landed on a rooftop 2 streets away, leaving a deep impression in the clay tile. It moved rapidly from roof to roof and across buildings in a straight line toward a specific prestigious clan compound. Naruto made no effort to hide his anger or his destination. He knew something had happened to Hinata, while he was not sure what exactly, he just knew something was very wrong. He couldn't feel her chakra at its normal levels, and what he could sense was very dull. Hinata's chakra had always appeared to be a bright violet color that was easily distinguishable from any other person. A pair of Hyuga guards stood outside of the closed main gates, became alarmed as they suddenly felt a surge of demonist chakra in the area. They each activated their Byakugan to find what appeared to be hell heading right for them. Before they could alert anyone else or react in any way, Naruto appeared right in front of them wearing an evil look and a pair of black shorts and a t-shirt under his chakra cloak. Move. Naruto's voice was deep and dark. Move now, and I won't hurt you much. Again, his voice was dark but measured. We will defend the Hyuga with our lives if needed. The man standing on the right said. Yes, you have no business here. Demon. The other man spoke with obvious disdain in his voice. Naruto didn't seem to react except when he moved with inhuman speed to knock the pair of guards into unconsciousness. Without a moment of hesitation, the blonde performed a series of hand seals and silently released burst of wind from his mouth toward the closed gate. It stood no chance and shattered with an enormously loud sound of wood breaking. After dispatching the compound's front gate, Naruto found a group of Hyuga who stood ready to defend their home. If Naruto hadn't been consumed with anger and rage and thinking entirely clearly, he would have easily understood their position of defending their home. But at the moment he could only think straight enough to avoid killing anyone. Naruto released a bit of energy, signaling to everyone present that he was serious and was not going to back down. Move, or I will move you. Crossing his arms over his chest, Naruto then extended them quickly and created a wave of air to push the barrier of people out of his way. Most of the Hyuga were sent flying across the courtyard, but a few were experienced shinobi and avoided Naruto's strike. Unfortunately for them, instinct was driving him, and his extensive battle experience made him a dangerous threat. He expected to have to deal with some challenging opponents among the clan. A chakra tail swung out and knocked a shuriken out of the sky, causing the enraged man to look at the source of the attack and found an Anbu wearing a bear mask. Uzumaki Naruto, you have violated the Hyuga compound, attacked members of its clan and caused a disruption to the village. The Anbu spoke with an authoritative voice. By all rights, the masked man, Koga, was correct in his assessment. However, Naruto was not interested in anything the other man said or the subsequent consequences of his actions and was not going to let anyone stand in his way. All that mattered was figure out what was happening to his friend. Don't get in my way. He then let out a fearsome screeching roar and flashed to appear directly in front of the bear-masked Anbu. The Anbu threw a series of strikes at Naruto, but none of them connect as the blonde skillfully dodged and parried around the glowing fingertips easily. Out of frustration, Koga leapt back a few meters to open some space to assess his options. Naruto, on the other hand, was not in a mood to have a long-term fight and wanted to end the confrontation. He closed the gap and began throwing lightning-fast and heavy punches, each connected with the Anbu, who was not expecting such a high level of speed or power. In a ditch effort to move back to the offensive, Koga attempted to impale Naruto with a kunai, but the blade could not penetrate the cloak of chakra. His right wrist began to burn since the Jinchuriku took hold of him and applied pressure. The radius and ulna shattered like glass, but the man didn't cry out in pain. Naruto threw a hard left fist, shattering the mask, breaking the man's noses, bright red blood flew. Koga fell into darkness, and Naruto set him down somewhat gently and moved toward a tall building. He could still sense Hinata's chakra in its dull status, but he was also close enough he could smell her. "What is happening out there?" one of the elders asked to no one in particular. "I sent Koga to check out the disruption. He will not fail us. I suspect it might the branch members getting upset over Hinata losing her title as heiress." The second elder pointed to Hinata's unconscious body on the floor. Her arms were bound behind her back, the forearms were lashed tighter with the rope extending around the elbow and up to the mid-biceps. The rope placement was used to ensure that if she woke up, she would not be able to move her arms apart or loosen the bindings. Add to that her ankles were also bound with a lash from her ankles to her forearms, effectively rendered her immobile and defenseless. The paper seal was still on Hinata's back, it glowed as it siphoned her chakra. "Let us seal her quickly and so that we can announce Hanabi-sama's elevation and reinstate obedience." A third elder spoke up in a neutral tone. "We will shortly, once Hiashi arrives. As her father, he has the right to administer the seal himself, but if he refuses out of sentimentality, one of us will to it." The first and most senior of the trio instructed. The wall of the large meeting hall blew open, sending wood and debris everywhere. The three men turned to see a pair of bright red orbs that seemed to be floating within the dust. After a moment they moved forward and revealed they were eyes that belonged to a young man. The men each recognized who had caused the ruckus and realized the seriousness of the situation. Malevolent chakra flooded the room and became stifling. Naruto looked around the room when he saw Hinata bound and laying on the floor. His heart nearly stopped, and his blood ran cold for a moment. The feeling of surprise gave way to more anger, causing a second tail to rise from his back as the demon's attention turned to the trio of old men standing near her. "What have you done to her, you bastards?" His anger was very apparent, and he was fighting to maintain control, but Hinata's state was making it extremely difficult. "How dare you? You have no right to be here or interfere with our clan's business." One of the men stepped forward, refusing to show any intimidation. Naruto let out a deep and angry laugh. He knew the old men were no match for him, but also knew they would try to stop him. "Don't try anything, old man. You have no chance against me." His smile showed the elongated canine teeth as a low deep growl escaped his throat. "Last chance, let me take her away and you will each walk away with your lives and bodies intact. Fight me, and you will suffer the consequences of your actions. We can take him if we fight together." The senior man spoke up again, causing the others to look hesitant, but each stepped forward. "Have it your way." Surprisingly though, Hiashi darted through the hole in the wall, attempting to hit Naruto in a critical place. But the blonde sidestepped the clan leader. The man spun around and caught Naruto on the right forearm. The problem was Naruto's right forearm was currently constructed of pure demon chakra and repulsed Hiashi. However, the man was very experienced and wasn't easily defeated, as soon as he was on solid footing again. Hiashi threw another series of strikes and a few hand seals, calling out, "Wind style. Vacuum release." Hiashi forced chakra to his palms and created streams of air that darted toward Naruto and then immediately charged, hoping to catch the demon boy off guard. Unfortunately for Hiashi, his plan failed as Naruto created his own wind release to deflect the vacuum palm attack. Hiashi was not fast enough to hit Naruto in a hand-to-hand fight, and Naruto could see that the man was going to be a challenge but could be defeated quickly. His anger helped to fuel his speed and straight, and now that Hinata's father was standing directly in of front, the older man might be able to answer why Hinata was bound and unconscious. "These old fuckers couldn't answer my question. So how about it, Hiyashi? What happened? You need to learn some manners, boy? Hiyashi attacked again with a somewhat predictable series of chakra-infused fingertips attempting to hit any of Naruto's tenketsu points. Catching the man's arm, sidestepping around, Naruto was able to sweep Hiyashi's leg and pin the man face down on the floor. While holding Hiyashi's right arm against the man's back, Naruto placed his left forearm against the back of the Hyuga neck. The blonde then looked at the elders who looked as if they were going to interfere. Take a step forward and I will break his neck and then you three will die a moment later. His words were deadly serious and gave no room of misunderstanding or bluffing. What do you want? Hiyashi asked in his usual calm voice. Being an experienced leader, a shinobi and skilled negotiator, he knew how to stay calm no matter the situation. Simple. I want to know what happened to Hinata. Why is her chakra so dull? Why is she tied up like an animal going to slaughter? And most importantly, why is she unconscious laying on the floor? This is a Hyuga clan matter and none of your concern, the young woman's father answered callously. He groaned in pain as Naruto pulled his arm higher, placing stress on the glenoid joint. Wrong answer. Now tell me, or you can explain yourself to Kakashi-sensei, or I could just take her to safety after killing each one of you. If you kill us, everyone will know you are just some dangerous demon who needed to be locked away years ago. As we advised the Hokage when you were born. The first elder spoke up again. Naruto turned an angry glare toward the man, causing the pale man to become a shade whiter. It took every ounce of willpower not to lash out and massacre every man in the room. I don't want to kill anyone, and I am not a monster, but I will also do whatever it takes to protect my friends. Naruto looked over his shoulder as he felt a large number of chakra presence approaching rapidly. Some of which he recognized. Releasing the hold on Hiyashi, Naruto rushed past the elders, knocking one to the floor. She scooped Hinata up without a moment of hesitation and kicked through the opposite wall that led to the outside world. Running fast, he released his chakra cloak, having accomplished his goal of locating the blue net. Running hard, he could not sense things as well as he could in Sage mode, but he could feel that no one was in pursuit at the moment. After about 2 hours of running, Naruto arrived at a cave hidden within a mountain. It was a place he could be alone and hide from the villages while he was growing up. He also isolated himself after Jiraiya's death so he could let himself go. No one knew about it. Part of the reason was thanks to his late godfather, who taught him the art of Fujitsu during their 2-year world trip. Naruto set Hinata down gently on the floor of the cave. He realized that he had no weapons or blades to cut the ropes. Sighing slightly, he began searching around for something to cut the bindings while he was near the back of the cave. The glow of the seal caught his attention. It was something that had gone unnoticed until that moment. What the hell is that? It looks like a chakra suppression seal. It would explain why her chakra is so dull and why she's unconscious. The demon fox surmised. That makes sense. Do you think I can just remove it? I don't see why not. Just look at it closely to make sure it doesn't have a trap or anything. That's a good point, but let me cut her loose first. She is a capable shinobi and most likely has a blade on her person. Looking at her form, he observed no weapons pouches or holsters. I don't see any of her normal gear. The fox growled in annoyance. You really are a moron. You keep weapons hidden, right? The blonde nodded absent-mindedly. You know I can't see you nodding, right? Yes. Damn it. I keep weapons hidden just like any other shinobi. The realization hit him. Hinata was a shinobi and a very capable one. Of course, she has weapons hidden. A question popped into his mind, and the reality of his situation finally hit him. Where do girls hide weapons? He often hid extra weapons in a small tattooed storage seal over his right rib cage. Duh, I should have a few kunai in my seal. Lifting his shirt, he pressed a hand to the seal and activated it with some chakra, but nothing happened. Usually, he would be able to feel his tools present, but there was nothing. The seal was empty. Come on, just check her. You can't leave her like that. Look at her hands. Naruto looked at her hands and could see they were becoming blue-purple-ish from lack of proper blood supply. He knelt next to Hinata. His heart pounded in his ears as his face felt hot and sweat beads formed on his forehead. I had to do this. I really hope she doesn't get mad at me. Don't worry, she will understand. You also don't need to tell her either. No, I have to, it's only right and she will know anyway, she's smart. Naruto knelt next to Hinata. He looked at her bound arms, noticing that her ankles were nearly touching her forearms. How disgusting. To treat your daughter like this. He touched her right shoulder with his left hand. He hesitated for a moment and looked for any type of reaction. Moving his hands down her arm until he reached the end of her sleeve. His fingers grazed her pale bare skin. It was the smoothest thing he had ever felt. His heart was racing, and the cave felt like a hot spring. Moving to her stomach, Naruto felt her tight firm abs as he checked from side to side, but he found that he could not reach the left side of her. He then ran a flat palm down her spine between her shoulder blades, feeling all the toned muscles, and then down to the small of her back, but still nothing. Moving his hand over her right outer thigh, he ignored the thoughts that were starting to pop up in the back of his mind, proceeding down to her calf, stopping at the bindings. He then moved his hand back up between both of her lower legs but stopped at the knee. Maybe she really is unarmed. I have checked everywhere and found nothing, not even a lockpick. Don't be stupid. Do you go out completely unarmed, even on your day off? The fox snarled. He knew Naruto was afraid to check her thoroughly, but the situation required suspending usual decorum. Check around the waistband. She would put them somewhere easily accessible but not easily detected. The one-armed man could feel and hear his heart pounding in his ears. His forehead held beads of sweat, his mouth was dry, and his hand trembled as he reached out to her again. Touching her stomach again over the shirt, he instinctually looked at her face. He could see her breathing quietly but didn't react to his touch. Please forgive me, Hinata, he whispered to her. He slipped his thumb inside her waistband and proceeded to slide his hand along the top of her pants, starting at the tie in the middle. Her skin was smooth and warm. He felt the top of her panties through her pants as his middle finger changed position. When he registered what he had felt, blood rushed to his face, and he shook away any other thoughts. Come on, kid. Stop being such a coward. Naruto suddenly jumped as Kurama's words roared through his mind, but when he moved, his hand slipped a bit lower and he felt something. What is that? He pulled his hand away from the waistband and moved to the spot. He noticed something that was not soft. It was on her right side, close to the hip bone, ilium. He hesitantly touched over the material of her pants, found the object again as he followed it with his index finger. It was a little over 7 centimeters long by about half a centimeter wide. Alright, now that I found something, how the hell do I get it? Come on, kid, you know what you have to do. Sighing, yeah, I know. Taking a deep breath, focusing his mind on the task at hand. They didn't have forever, and he needed to act. If he had a right hand, it would be simple to get the retrieve the unknown object, but with only a left, things were going to be challenging. Alright, it's time to nut up or shut up. The fox rolled his eyes but said nothing. You know, I have never been this close to her, and I never really noticed how beautiful she is. Not just her looks, but she really is the nicest person in the world. He thought as he brushed a few stray strands of hair off of her face. The tops of his finger brushed across her cheek and lingered for a few moments. She'll make some man a wonderful wife one day. I hope she can find someone someday. Maybe she already has. Dumb ass. Are you talking about me? We are just friends, and after what happened with her family, she will probably never want to speak to me again. The statement was more upsetting than he would have thought. To not have Hinata around or be able to talk to her or have missions together, the thought was painful. I hope you can forgive me someday, Hinata. Just know I am not doing this because I'm some pervert. Without thinking or realizing it, he leaned down and placed a kiss on her cheek. He slipped his hand past the waistband of her black pants. He intentionally kept his palm against the pants material, trying not to touch her. But he could feel the heat from her body against the back of his hand and forearm. Part of his arm brushed her panties, they felt soft and delicate. Looking down, he could also see they were a dark blue with a lace edge. Gulping out loud and trying to focus. Had someone walked in at that moment, the image of Naruto with his hand down Hinata's pants while she was tied up and unconscious. He would have a heck of a time explaining himself. The only thing that could make things worse would be if Hinata woke up. Add to the whole situation. The fox was howling with laughter in the mindscape, knowing exactly what was occurring and how embarrassed both of the humans would be over the situation. Shut the fuck up, yaw, stupid fox. The blonde's words made the fox laugh harder. Finally reaching the unknown object, the young man used his index finger to try and figure out what he had found. It became apparent that the unidentified object was within a hidden pocket. Makes sense. What was bewildering Naruto was how to get into the pocket and retrieve the unknown object. After what felt like an hour, but in reality, it had only been a few minutes, frustration had started to set in. I hope this is a knife or something sharp, Hinata, because this is getting really uncomfortable and embarrassing, he said gently to the unconscious woman. Leaning down closer to her midsection, Naruto was not known for his patience and was about to rip the pants open but knew that would result in a very uncomfortable and potentially painful conversation later. So, he held himself in check from acting too rashly. He did, however, do something much more drastic. He reached back to the small knot at the top of the pants and pulled one of the strings. Fortunately, it let go without much effort. When the pants were looser, he peeled the top of them down near the hidden pocket, over her hip, exposing part of her panties and pelvis. Moving the material enough to reveal part of the hidden pocket, he began to study it and attempted not to take in any of the new surrounding sights. How the hell would she get this thing out in an emergency? He asked himself out loud. His eyes studied the outline of the pocket. The stitching seemed to continuous. He was about to take the pants off, but he noticed a stray strand that was in a fold of the cloth material. It was red and stood out against the dark pants. Using his fingernail, he coaxed the string out of the fold. Well, let's try it, unless you want to tell me. He looked up at the sleeping woman but nothing. Punching the string between his index finger and thumb, he pulled, but it didn't move. He tugged sharply with more force, but it just tugged at the pocket and pants. Groaning in annoyance, "You're killing me with this." Rolling the string between his finger and thumb, it didn't feel like the other material, more coarse and stuff. Then it dawned on him. Focusing on his hand in the strain, he forced some chakra into the strain. It glowed and heated slightly. The stitching that created the hidden pocket began to burn a bit. He pulled on the chakra strain, it released and broke away from the pocket and freed the object held within. It fell loose onto her exposed skin. The blonde sighed in relief as he grabbed the object. So focused, he didn't notice that he had exposed most of Hinata's pelvis, giving him an unrestricted view of her panties and the treasure. "Ha! Got you, you little pain in the ass," he said to the inanimate object. He studied it carefully and could see it appeared to be a small folding knife with a mother-of-pearl handle. Wow, I wasn't expecting something so classic. And why? He didn't realize the last word until he said it. Sorry. He raised his right arm out of habit when he was embarrassed, to rub the back of his head, but the realization that he no longer had a right hand struck him, painfully. Holding onto the knife, he looked at it carefully and found the top of the blade. It had to be pulled out by hand. But he only had one hand. Well fuck, how the hell do I open this thing? He asked rhetorically. Only one idea came to mind. He grabbed the top of the blade with his teeth and pulled it free. The blade released and opened easily once he got it moving, and it fully extended into position with a pop of the blade lock. There was something else on the knife. The scent of Hinata's body was potent and wafted off of the tool, and it assaulted his olfactory nerve. He let it linger, and absent-mindedly memorizing every note of her scent. It might have been a shameful thing to do, but he couldn't help his baser urges. Ero-sensei would be bouncing off the walls if he saw me right now. And my mom would probably bounce me off the walls if she saw me. She most certainly would have Kit. The fox spoke softly. He too missed the hot-tempted red-headed Uzumaki. Glancing over to Hinata once again, he realized that her pants were open still. He had neglected to put them back in his excitement over the knife. But he did let his eyes linger over her exposed skin. Her shirt was pulled up slightly, allowing him to see her toned but undefined stomach. She wasn't fat in any way, but she wasn't skin and bones. She was a healthy young woman. Further down, her panties were simple dark blue with a coral-colored trim at the top and around the legs. The color seemed darker toward the bottom, but he wouldn't let himself linger too long. He also noticed the outline of her femininity. It seemed to call out to him, like a siren to a sailor. He was a young man after all. With a small measure of reluctance, Naruto fixed Hinata's clothes back to their previous state. The ropes were dense and robust, and Naruto had to work hard at cutting through them. After a few minutes, Hinata's arms and legs were free from their bindings. They left red ligature marks on her usually pale skin. Naruto rubbed the areas. He didn't know any medical jutsu but hoped that rubbing the marred skin would help to get the blood flowing. Naruto finished massaging the areas that were irritated with the ropes, and only time would heal them fully. He also removed the chakra suppression seal and could instantly feel the change in Hinata's chakra flow. Now it was a matter of time until she would wake up. The thought of changing her clothes had crossed his mind, but he decided against it. She had been fondled enough for one day. The cave was starting to get cold, and he wanted to protect her from the cold mountain night. The blonde-haired shinobi remembered a supply kit and then nearly kicked himself since there might have been a spare knife in it as well. He lifted his shirt and touching a tattooed seal on his left, after a moment a cloth bag appeared. The kit contained a change of clothes, blankets, field rations, and some other essentials. Within a few moments, Hinata was wrapped into a blanket, and he also used some of his clothes as a makeshift pillow. With Hinata freed from her bindings and secured in a blanket, Naruto looked out of the west-facing cave entrance. The sun had dipped behind the horizon, and the one-armed man knew he needed to start a fire for the night. Typically, he would have made a few clones to gather wood, but without a right hand, that would be impossible. Reluctantly, he knew what was needed, but before setting out to look for some firewood, Naruto attempted to write a note to Hinata if she woke up while he was away. But he found that just like making a clone, writing would be impossible. His handwriting was horrible with his right hand. His left made things completely illegible. Kneeling next to Hinata, Naruto looked at her longingly, feeling a mixture of emotions. There was something that he had never felt for anyone. It caused a knot in his chest, and his stomach was churning. The thought of leaving her unprotected was excruciating. The further realization about how much he relied upon his clones was somewhat crushing. Self-doubt crept in. Am I really that dependent on them? Hinata, I know you can't hear me. He let a light chuckle out, or maybe you can. I don't know. He brushed a few stray strands of hair off of her face. His fingertips lingered on her cheek, and his face flushed brightly. Please wake up soon. We have a few things to talk about. He paused before speaking again. You may end up hating me. I hope you don't, but if you do. Turning away, but remained the same spot, his only hand resting in his lap. I did everything to protect you, and I would do it again. With those words, the blonde-haired man disappeared from the cave. The only thing left was a Hiraishin kunai that was lying next to her. It was the only message he could leave. A few moments after Naruto departed, a faint whisper escaped the sleeping woman's lips. Naruto-kun.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.